Right.
So efficient.
So let's try it. Okay, letting the public in. And now, Mr. Counselor.
Thank you. My name is Ed Hamrick, and I'm an Assistant Attorney General, and I represent the State Board of Land Commissioners. Today is Wednesday, August 12th, 2026, and the board has been in executive session to discuss a property matter that was noticed for executive session, specifically the potential Dow Junction direct exchange. That executive session was for the purpose of discussing the transaction, and the information discussed may have given a competitive bargaining advantage to a person whose interest may be adverse to the trust interest. Executive session that was therefore authorized under 24-6-4023A1 of the Colorado Revised Statutes. The discussion was limited to those matters, and no decision was made by the board in executive session. The board is now back on the record and ready to proceed with their public meeting agenda. Thank you.
All right, welcome back to the meeting, and I'd like to open up for folks in the room and online for any comments about non-agenda items. Alec, it doesn't seem like we have any.
Not seeing hands raised in
Great.
Zoom, so.
All right, moving along, Director Rosamito, any announcements?
Thank you, Chair Fro. The only announcement is that our November board meeting will be on Tuesday, November 10th.
You got that? So that means there's not a workshop that month, right?
There could be
Oh, that could be too. All right, but we're having our the data plan around is
November 10th.
All righty, then let's move to our final action items. Oh, excuse me, Mr. Brass. You need the report? Natural resources.
Good morning, Commissioners. Tim Brass, Assistant Director for Parks, Wildlife, and Lands here at DNR. Glad to be here and provide the report on behalf of the Executive Director's Office. Starting with a couple of staffing updates. In late July, DNR announced that Jennifer Walker-Graff was selected to serve as the new Director of ECMC. Jennifer brings years of experience working on energy and previously served as DNR's Assistant Director for Energy Innovation. DNR's Assistant Director for Tribal Engagement, Stacy Coleman, recently announced that she has accepted a new role. She's going to be serving as a tribal consultant with Keystone Policy Center.
So sad.
Oh,
whoa. Sorry, really sorry.
Good grab, good grab. Stacy's leadership has been instrumental in advancing DNR's tribal engagement strategic priority, and we wish her luck in her new role. Brief budget and legislative update. The department's in the process of developing our legislative agenda for the 2027 legislative session, and department's agenda will ultimately need to be approved by the next administration as we enter into the upcoming legislative session. Moving on to federal updates. Colorado DNR, State Forest Service, and the Governor's Office recently endorsed two bills introduced by Representative Patterson and Senator Bennett, which are designed to address mountain pine beetle outbreak in Colorado. These bills would enable close coordination between federal, state, tribal, local governments, and also provide critical funding and resources to protect critical infrastructure, property, reduce wildfire risk, and restore our forests. The Forest Service land management planning process for the Cimarron Comanche National Grasslands continues to move forward, and a draft plan is anticipated to be released on October 2nd for public comment. The Forest Service will be hosting a virtual meeting on August 25th to provide some additional information on the draft plan, as well as the public comment process. Moving on to water, as of August 6th, 91% of the state remains in moderate to exceptional drought. And we remain in a statewide drought emergency. In response to the governor's statewide drought emergency proclamation on June 4th, the Colorado Drought Task Force has been working to identify measures that the state can take to mitigate the impacts of drought. The task force last met on July 23rd and evaluated response measures, which staff are now working on. On July 31st, the Federal Department of Interior released their final environmental impact statement on operations of the Colorado River at Lakes Mead and Powell. While the details are still being analyzed by the upper division states, we are encouraged that the new operating guidelines will better reflect existing water supply, which we think must guide any plan going forward. Key elements of the operations described in the final EIS will rely on outstanding agreements that have yet to be finalized. And it's going to be difficult to fully assess the effectiveness of the operations in the basin until those agreements are finalized and implemented. Moving on to energy, last week the governor issued an executive order intended to make permitting more efficient while protecting the environment and public health. ECMC, along with other state permitting agencies, will be implementing the directives of that EO over the coming months, and a report on opportunities to streamline permitting is due to the governor's office in December. Today, DNR is participating in an event in Weld County to celebrate the commissioning of the Molson Coors Keensburg solar project. That project was developed in part on a site of a reclaimed coal mine, which was formerly regulated by DNR's Division of Reclamation, Mining, and Safety. In the spring, the governor signed House Bill 26-1268, which allows local governments to designate formally disturbed lands like former mines, oil and gas sites, closed landfills, and industrial brownfields for redevelopment as renewable energy projects. Finally, the BLM has proposed changes to rules related to oil and gas leasing and royalties, and comments are due to the BLM by August 24th. DNR divisions are currently reviewing the rules, and the department is likely to comment. Moving on to forestry, the Colorado State Forest Service just announced their forest restoration and wildfire risk mitigation grant is open for applications, and there's $7 million available for wildfire mitigation and forest health projects statewide. That application period closes on October 8th. This summer, 3 co-swap projects are reducing wildfire risks on state land board lands in Larimer County near Carter Lake, El Paso County in the Black Forest, and on State Forest State Park in Jackson County. Mountain Pine Beetle Task Force has now formed 6 working groups to work on developing recommendations for the 15 tasks that were included in the recent executive order from Governor. The next full task force meeting is going to take place on August 18th. Lastly, a couple of CPW updates. CPW has launched an additional set of public meetings to be held up in North Park throughout the month of August, which will be used to help inform the future management of the North Sandhills recreation area. At the July CPW Commission meeting in Ignacio, the Commission voted to advance a new daily bag limit of 2 on all fur bearer species taken through recreational harvest. The Commission also considered a rulemaking initiated by a citizen petition, which would have banned the sale of fur taken through avocational take. However, that rulemaking was terminated on a 6-5 vote. That concludes my update. I'm happy to answer any questions you all may have.
Commissioners, any questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good to see you. All right then. I guess we'll move to with our final action items, A and B.
Thank you. I'm Mindy Gonsagan.
597 First Street.
Yes. I'm the Stewardship Ecosystem Services Program Manager and here today to present 2 grassland carbon programs. And with the board's permission, I'd like to switch the order of those 2 agenda items. And start first with grassland carbon project for the Chancellor. Okay, the board has been to the Chancellor Ranch, I believe at least once during most of your tenure, and so you're familiar with that property. It's our 2nd largest ranch in our portfolio. And this grassland carbon project, the annual revenue of this is expected to exceed the revenue for the grazing lease. This was true also, I think, well, actually, it wasn't true for the Bohart, but it's true for this one. And that was because of the exceptional high grazing value for the Bohart. But still, this is significant. It's 100 and almost 160% of what the grazing annual rent is. The Chancellor Ranch is located in central Los Animas County. It's 51,548 acres. And this is a map of the property and its immediately surrounding environs. It's tucked up against the Pittman Canyon Maneuver Site and against our 2nd largest ranch. That said, it only has 2 leases on it. And that is both of these were leased recently this past April through an RFP process. So we have the Chouac Cattle Company paying $5.04 per acre, and KB Outdoors, which has the recreation for that property as well. This new lease is actually the way the grassland carbon program is working is that we actually put a payment for ecosystem services right into a separate lease with the qualified carbon project developer. For the Chouac Cattle Company, the grassland carbon revenue, the annual revenue is expected to be almost $8 per acre, with an estimated annual rent of $411,000 per year. This will involve the entire property of the ranch. And the expiration date that will be one of the terms I'll be explaining is a 10-year extension. So if the board approves it today or effective on the signature date, actually of the lease, this would be extended in about 4, 5, or 6 months. So again, this annual carbon revenue is projected to exceed the grazing rent by 160%. And I do want to point out that the actual project site that will define the exact areas of the ranch to be included in the grassland carbon will probably be modified and reduced somewhat based to reflect the ungrazable lands, the steep and rocky slopes. So I'm going to go through the terms of the grassland carbon ecosystem service agreement. Staff is still completing this. We're very close to finalizing this grassland carbon agreement that will be used in grassroots carbon. But right now, this project for the Chancellor Ranch will include the entire lease. Staff completed a line of business review. This is standard now for all new leases on our properties. The issues raised on this had mostly to do with mineral development and potential questions. Could future livestock tanks be added? Of course, they could be. New fencing and even the kind of pinyon juniper removal would also be allowed to improve the bighorn sheep habitat and also for grazing. No sections are going to be removed for incompatible state land board leases. There are no currently big projects planned for this, so we're looking to include the entire ranch. And as I mentioned, Grassroots Carbon will be the qualified carbon project developer, will actually go in as they prepare and do the baseline soil carbon testing. They will identify and remove those areas of steep rocky slopes. So the revenue that's projected will be probably diminished, but that's an estimate based on the current carbon credit value of about $35 per acre. History or our experience has shown the last few years that carbon credit price continues to rise. So that estimated revenue is again an estimate, but it's our best guess from what we think will happen. A comprehensive regenerative grazing plan will be developed and reporting system so the regenerative grazing will increase the soil organic carbon, and the reporting system will track compliance with that. On this property, Steve is already doing some regenerative grazing practices, but the additionality provided for this project will include the use of tracking systems like Halter and the use of Bensike. The state land board will keep the land in agricultural use for 30 years. That's part of the new ecosystem services leasing agreement. And Chewacca Cattle Company's 10-year grazing lease will be extended to coincide with the completion of the first 10 years of the grassland lease. We wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about the revenue share. This staff has been working to negotiate this and develop this grassland agreement. We've kind of been able to land in a place where we, rather than when I came to you a year ago and we said this is the way that we're going to be getting revenue, all the costs will be subtracted. They're covered by the carbon project developer, but they'll be allowed to cover all their costs and then they'll take their 30%. We've negotiated to a point where we're working on a model that's more similar to our other ecosystem services programs, where we have a percentage of the gross revenue. So we, I'll talk a little bit about this, why we did that, but we ended up where it's just kind of straight percentages from the gross revenue. And this allows us to not get involved with having to audit all their costs and understand those costs. And understand them, not that we don't want to understand them, but to kind of track them and at what point the companies experience those costs either early on or later in the system. And so we just wanted to have a more straightforward tracking system. Where we ended up with this was that the qualified carbon project developer, in this case it's Grassroots Carbon, will take on all the project costs, and their total share will be 33%. So they'll have to cover the costs out of that. That results in a 33.5% share for the state land board and a 33.5% share for the Chewacca Cattle Company. This reflects the 50-50 share that we said that we would, our policy currently shows that the land board would split with its grazing lessee the revenue from the carbon project developer. So this is kind of driven first from what we've been able to negotiate as low a percentage as possible that the carbon project developer would take so that we would have a larger share to split. This 33% share for Grassroots Carbon reflects their cost efficiency for very large ranches. They obviously want the biggest ranches. It's more efficient for them, more cost effective. And so we've been able to negotiate this to be 33% for the carbon project developer and resulting in that 33.5% split. This streamlines the revenue payments to the state land board and our lessees, and eliminates the state land board on others. Any questions about this slide? There is one recommended lease term that falls outside the biological carbon sequestration lease. This policy was adopted. I presented it to you last August, exactly a year ago. And it was, that policy reflected our best thinking at the time. But this one term, which is the base ground rent of $1.50 per acre, we thought at that time that we had a base ground rent. And this term is really an artifact of where we were at that time. We've kind of evolved. In fact, last October, we took a big departure of moving away from tracking all their costs and moving just into this gross revenue. So we're really pleased with that direction. It benefits us in the ways I just described. But I wanted you to be aware of it, that this is a departure from what the policy says. And I am planning to come back to you in November with a revised policy that is more reflective of how we're approaching this program today. I wanted to show you, this is a snip from one of the first slides I showed you that shows the rent per acre that we're getting from grazing, as well as the grassland carbon. So this $1.50 per acre is really minimal. It's actually included in this. We feel that we're being able to capture that in the grassland carbon revenue that we're getting. And had we kept with it, we would have just, we believe it would have just have to be subtracted from the 798 here and then paid back later. And so we just feel the way that it's just more effective just to remove that and just go with the straight percentage. I did want to point out that we'll be getting these carbon credit payments once a year at the end of each year. We're in a pool with hundreds of other ranches. The carbon project developers doing their best to sell the credits at the highest value all through the year. And then we receive a percentage of that at the end of every year. Additional considerations I wanted you to be aware of. Some of these are in the policy. The grazing applicant is working with a board-approved qualified carbon project developer. The lease is over 300 acres. That's another item that's in our leasing policy. The property is not in the path of development. It's not under a planning lease or other large scale development for solar or any other kind of project, and is not currently contemplated for such a use. The lessee has a strong interest and commitment to or experience in regenerative grazing. And the lessee is in good standing with the board and has no lease violations. So with that, staff recommends that the board approve the payment for ecosystem services lease rider AG 117517, subject to the terms presented by staff and listed in detail in the board. Commissioner.
Just a question. In pricing the carbon sequestration, is there a transparent public market you can compare to or look at and help determine what's market value?
There are numerous websites that you can go to that track the price of carbon for different types of carbon projects. There are registries to see where the carbon projects are listed, what types of projects they are. If you were a representative of a company that wanted to buy carbon credits, you could go to those registries and compare the projects that are offered. But again, you could Google numerous different kind of platforms to tell you the current price of carbon credits.
And does it vary by region or geology or geography? How does it vary?
It definitely varies. I'm sure that it varies by region, but it really what you're looking at is the type of protocol that the project is being registered under. For example, one example of the statement where we've been careful to have our projects fall, we're just selling carbon credits. There's a trend now to increase, to also register the co-benefits that a grassland carbon project would create. For example, you know that regenerative grazing also results in increased biodiversity in the vegetation that's produced. It brings back a lot of native vegetation. There are some companies that wanted to capture those co-benefits of biodiversity. We're reluctant to include those at this time because that market is so new and the prices for those are so are varying considerably. So that factor will affect the value paid for that carbon credit. That, for example, that carbon credit that includes this wide array of other co-benefits, some of which aren't even defined yet, can be $45 for carbon credit. So that's going to affect the price per credit more than maybe perhaps where it's located.
Is the price of carbon or the capacity, to put it different, is the capacity of soil to hold carbon? What are the variables? Aridity,
Soil composition.
soil composition, soil health, etc. What are the various factors that go into the carrying capacity?
Well, the climate as well. So the amount of precipitation that a property would receive, but soil is the largest single factor for that.
So more fertile soil by definition. If you were doing carbon credits in the corn and soybean land, Iowa or Illinois or Minnesota, be more valuable than.
Exactly. You'd be able to sequester far more carbon. And so as a whole, Colorado's lands are fairly arid and don't sequester as much as they do in the Midwest. That said, we can increase the amount of soil organic carbon in our soils and create better stewardship outcomes, better vegetation, forage response, like on the surface.
Harvey?
Mindy, when you say there aren't any contemplated solar arrays, is there a lot of coordination between you and James and long-term plans for solar arrays? And I assume these new leases preclude installing them?
The new leases would preclude installing a large surface development project. There are off-ramps that we could use to exit such a program if we wanted to. And they include paying back carbon credits or enrolling other lands to offset the impact of taking lands out of this. One reason we do the line of business review is to get our staff's best thinking from the business program managers on what these future uses might be. The items that came up for this, I mentioned some of them earlier, but one of them is mineral development. This isn't an area where there's a exploratory play for helium leasing. 6 or 7 years ago, the board decided not to lease the state, the Chancellor Ranch for exploratory leasing until that play was proven out. The next lease that I'm going to talk to you will involve helium, so I can talk about that. I will say that the Chancellor doesn't have a lot of surface, a lot of mineral ownership. About 10% of the ranch has minerals beneath it. Most of it we own just the surface. So with that, those line of business reviews are our staff's opportunity to say, oh, I'm not sure this property really makes sense for a long-term use like this.
And then the other part of the question was, does the current ag lessee, are there very specific items they have to check off to earn their 33%?
Well, enrollment in the
sorry, go ahead. Well, I just meant I assume they're meant to do certain things in terms of their grazing to increase the carbon sequestration, and I'm just curious if there's a specific list that they have to follow.
A great question. Enrollment in this program is going to involve a much more detailed accounting of how they graze and reporting on that. And so far, far beyond what we require, right? And so by engaging, one of the things that this PES rider gives our lessees permission to do is to enter into a separate contract with the carbon project developer as well. And that requires them to do very detailed reporting of, where the cattle are at what time, what's the rest and recovery period. And that's why using these electronic mechanisms of halter or ear tags or vents, you can really very easily document exactly where the cattle are at any time. And so they're reporting that information to the carbon project developer. The carbon project developer is also doing monitoring and verification every year. That could include site visits, but it's often aerial kind of imagery, drone kind of monitoring. That's far beyond what we require. So that's the additionality that's involved with them getting paid for the practice that they're putting in place. And then the soil is actually tested at year 0 before the project starts, at year 5, and at year 10.
Got it. Thank you.
Good questions, commissioners. Any other questions for Mindy? All right, let's see if there's any questions or public comment on this matter.
Yeah, folks, sing along online. If you'd like to make a public comment on this agenda item, please use the raise hand function on Zoom. Chair Probe, I'm not seeing any hands on the line.
Well, commissioners, a little discussion before we call for a motion. Thoughts on this? You'd like to share or questions amongst ourselves?
I just think it's exciting as we're sort of moving in this direction.
learn a little bit more about how this works, so thank you. I think, and I commend you on the negotiation, obviously, and when a sector's evolving, you make rules with what you know, and then you continue to improve your position, and it seems clear to me that the sharing in gross and not having to wait until the developer's gotten everything back is clearly an improvement in our position. And I like the fact that it's pure percent and everybody's aligned, the rancher, his land board, the developer, to do the best practices, generate as much carbon and sell for the highest price. So I think we're in pretty good shape. Very nice work. All right, any other comments, Commissioner Pribble?
Good.
Oh, I mean,
I'm
glad you caught it. I'm glad you caught it. Commissioner Harvey, anything?
No, thanks.
All right, well, I'd love to get a motion from you all about this matter.
So I'll offer the motion then. So I move the board order, which is very extensive. It is for approval of the lease. Can you go to the previous slide perhaps? Because I'm not going to be able to read it off. There you go. Thank you. Approve the payment for ecosystem services lease writer AG 117597, subject to the terms presented by staff and listed in detail in the board order, which for everyone's edification is on page 15 and 16 of the board packet.
So you move that we adopt that board order.
Adopt the board order, absolutely.
Okay, may I have a second? Second. Mr. Scanlon. All right. Doesn't look like there's any further questions or comments. Commissioner Harvey, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Pribble?
Aye.
Mr. Heath? Aye. Mr. Scanlon? Aye. Chair votes yes, motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Mindy, for this matter, and got one more.
Okay. So. The second grassland carbon project involves a smaller agricultural waste, AG 113718, and that is with Stephen Walter Wooten. I won't go through that. This is a picture of Mr. Wooten overlooking part of probably his own wasteland. I don't have photographs of one of our 3 sections, but you can get a feel for the general topography. This is the first small state trust land the set of state trust land properties coming into a grassland carbon lease. It's exactly kind of what we're hoping for. It's that this program wouldn't be limited just to our largest ranches, but that our smaller properties have an opportunity to participate as well. Steve Wooten's lease is also in Los Angeles County, not far from the Chancellor Ranch. It involves 3 properties that total 1,800 acres. This is where those 3 properties are in location in reference to the Chancellor Ranch. And these are the 3 properties outlined in red and framed by his private ranch. You can see how these 3 properties fit into that larger project. He's also participating in the grassland carbon project with Grassroots Carbon and has applied to have our 3 sections included in that. This is not the only case of this happening. Statewide, we know of a couple of other ranches where people are involved in grassland carbon on their private ranches, but because we didn't have this opportunity to develop at the time, our properties have heretofore been left out of that opportunity. So this is the first time that we're able to bring in this. And as with the Chancellor Ranch, these properties are kind of rugged and there's going to be some ungrazable areas. One other issue that I wanted to talk about is this, of the 3 properties, this one is involved in a helium lease. All 3 were initially leased at one time. This helium play is in this general area. And this one property has progressed to a point where the ECMC has approved 4 helium well pad sites that are located here. And so this lease is moving forward with that lease happening on that one property. We probably expect development of that to occur within the next 2 years. So the existing leases on this property are Stephen Wooten's private lease. The rent per acre is just under $3 an acre. And the Helium Gas Company, they're paying $15 an acre on that one section. The PES rider for the Grassland Carbon lease is projected, these projections come from Grassroots Carbon, is approximately $8.33 per acre across all three properties. So a significant increase over his base grazing rent. And in fact, that annual Grassland Carbon revenue is projected to exceed that annual grazing revenue by about 183%. The participating acreage again in the annual revenue would be reduced to reflect ungrazable lands once the project proceeds to where they actually going to do the soil carbon testing. The Grassland PES rider will involve up to 1,800 acres of the Steve Wooten's ag lease. A line of business review for this project was also completed. The 7 acres that have already been permitted and approved by the ECMC will be removed from the property. It is possible, I want to say that with Helium oil and gas development, the footprint is much smaller than it is with a traditional oil and gas pad. Some of the pads are as small as 1 or 2 acres. The 7 acres includes all 4 permitted areas that are permitted by the ECMC and some connecting existing roads and new roads going out to some of those pads. There could be more land than this involved, but right now it's a pretty small area. It's all located in one area, one kind of flat area of that one section. And I did talk about this with Grassroots Carbon because Mr. Wooten has also leased parts of his own private ranch for Helium development. And so are they concerned and how are they going to address that with the Grassland Carbon program? And they have tremendous experience, a significant experience in Texas where oil and gas development is very common. And they said that often the area that's affected is de minimis. It's not that much. Even in this case, up to 20 acres easily or 40 could be removed without any impact. And if it even increased beyond that, because helium development cannot be drilled laterally, so they have to it all has to be vertical development. It occurs in small pockets and not in large reservoirs. They just said if it ended up being much more significant than these 4 pads, they would reduce future payments against any payment that we had received, like up to that point. But they did not seem concerned. They felt it wasn't significant to be a concern like at this time. And that, as I mentioned before, they will also remove those ungrazable steep rocky slopes from the project area. They will also prepare for this property. Our 3 properties would be part of this larger grazing plan with Mr. Wooten's private ranch or family ranch. And the state landlord will, again, keep this land in agricultural use for 30 years. That includes the first 10 years of the grazing lease and then a 20-year storage period. The gross revenue share structure for this project between Grassroots Carbon and the state land board will be a 35% share for the carbon project developer. That higher share reflects the reduced efficiency of costs for these smaller pieces. That would result in a share evenly between the state land board and Steve Wooten of 32.5%, and that reflects the 50-50 share that the state land board has with its grazings based on our policy. Again, this will streamline revenue payments to the state land board and our lessee and eliminate our need to audit all those expenses. And just going back to that, sorry, are there any questions about this and how this is different? We've kind of settled on this. We think 35% is still a great deal for the state land board. It seems like a little bit smaller than we would have for our largest ranches, but we really see this coming in for many of our lessees that are bringing in the health ranches. We're able to bring these smaller pieces as part of the development project. In fact, we've already received a couple of other, not applications yet, but calls from 4 other lessees that are doing the same thing and want to come and do some deal. In this case, with this lease, there's 2 recommended lease terms that are outside of our biological carbon sequestration leasing policy. The first involves Steve Wooten's 10-year grazing lease. This expires in December of 2030. So you may remember our current leasing policy said that if you're in your first 5 years, we'll extend that and we'll start a brand new 10-year grazing lease. We never really addressed what would happen if you weren't in those 10 years. And so this is one of the first ones that have come up. And the staff is recommending that the board approve a 6-year lease extension. A lease extension to coincide with completion of the first 10 years of the Grassland Carbon project. This is not a tremendous, it's a one to kind of 1.5 year extension beyond the 5-year limit that's in the leasing policy. And also, this is also, we're recommending this because it's not that much of an extension. We really do need to kind of come to a defined process. If the lessee has to give up their grazing lease term, re-advertise it, rebid on it, all of that process would take a long time, 9 months to a year perhaps, or at least 6 months. When this project was coming in, we just wanted to get in at the start of it so we could have the soil carbon testing occur at the same time at the larger ranch. And we felt that this was a reasonable request of the board to move forward with this. The other element is that those 3 parcels are integrated into his ranch. They've had that lease for at least 40 years. There's never been a competitive bid on them. Access to 2 of the properties has to occur through the private ranch. And so it just makes sense to lease this at this time with that approval, knowing that it's inconsistent right now with that lease. The second item is the removal of that ground rent of $1.50 per acre for the same reasons I discussed earlier. So I just wanted the board to be aware that these 2 terms would be inconsistent with the policy. Since this is a board action, just informing you of that departure, I think is sufficient, subject to your approval. So I think that, again, these additional considerations, these are the same that I mentioned with the Chancellor Ranch. They're working with a board-approved qualified project developer, which is Grassroots Carbon. The lease is over 300 acres of grazing. Property is not in the path of development, under planning lease for solar or any type of large-scale development, and is not contemplated for such a use. The lessee has a strong interest and commitment to regenerative grazing, and the lessee is a good standing and has no lease violations. So with that, staff recommends that the board approve PES payment for ecosystem services rider 113718, subject to the terms presented today.
Commissioners, any clarifying questions for Mindy?
Yeah, in the interest of education, how do these projects come about? Does the rancher initiate it, or does Grasslands or Grassroots go looking for available tracks, or are you out there advertising and marketing?
It's a great question. All 3 of those ways. Well, I'd say the first 2. Grassroots, along with a couple of other carbon project developers, not all of which have been approved by us, but most of them have, but are outreaching. They're reaching out to our lessees, especially our lessees of our largest ranches. Those are the most cost effective.
Oh, okay, you explained that. Why they go to the largest ranches, more cost effective. Got it.
The second one is that this project, Steve Wooten initiated it by coming to us and saying, I'd like to do this and I'd like to start this fall. Can I get approval from the board to participate, not just on the Chancellor, but on my private lease as well?
Just footnote question there. Is that because he sees obvious financial gain in doing so?
Yes.
Reward. Got it. Okay.
And then the third way, we had actually, my very first presentation to you in April 2025, I had this very ambitious timeline of when board approval would occur, when staff would begin to hold public meetings and get information and communications out to all our lessees about this being a new program. That's just been delayed because it's taken so long time to negotiate these documents and develop the documents. So we plan to, I'm very much hoping that next spring we'll be working in great fashion to bring more of these to you. The next step is to complete this Grassland Carbon ecosystem services agreement with the QPDs. Bring the leasing policy back to you in November, and then begin to market this to our lessees.
So in general, in as much as it's increased revenue for both SLB and the leasee, aggressive marketing by both, but especially us, would be of merit and value to us.
Very much so.
Okay.
And so if that, who would do that more?
Well, it'd be a combined staff effort. I mean, I know Emily would be tremendously involved with getting the communications out through our newsletters. I'm also hoping that we can hold similar to our ag forums, kind of public meetings around the state to explain this in more detail, how it would work. Already we have Jesse Price, our general grazing manager, talking about this. He's already forwarded me a number of people like Steve Wooten, who's interested in bringing their lands. They already have been as a grazing lease, but they have their private ranches already in a grassland carbon program. And I think we presented several of us at the Cattlemen's Association conference this summer. There's a lot of interest, and there's just a lot of uncertainty about what it means. So, but for us to be able to get out there and explain how it works, I also just wanted to say, well, two things. Grassroots Carbon has shared that true up that soil sampling at year 5 to see how it has been going. They've just completed their first round of those, and they've just said the results have been very promising. So they should be releasing that information. So
That's for the Colorado project.
that's for all of the projects, I think, no matter where they are within the West. But it does include a number of properties in Colorado. And just one other last thing I did. Can I ask you, do you know if Steve Wooten is online, or he was thinking of, I had explained to him how he could be available to talk to. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Quigley.
Well, it's a follow-up to Josie's question. So does there exist like a Chicago Board of Trade for this product line? Like you can take a bushel of corn to market. Well, in this case, you're taking the availability of a wide variety of acreages across the state of Colorado.
These projects are registered by the QPD, by the Qualified Carbon Project Developer, that on certain registries. So those are the places that they go to.
The registry acts like a market, if
Yes.
you will. Okay.
And there's, in the United States, there's a small number of leading registries that are the main ones that
Are
companies
they
go to.
regulated at all at the state or federal level?
They're not regulated, so this is a voluntary market, but there are a number of national and international standards of integrity that keep the integrity of these credits very high. And so it's in their interest, and it's all the carbon project developers. That's why we want to make sure that we work with ones that we approve of, that have certain ratings of high integrity that have been certified by different registries.
So absent regulation, is there a mandate or an expectation of transparency that allows both sides of the transaction some faith in the market?
Yes, all of those factors, the additionality, the durability of the project, how transparent it is, all of those are, every company is rated is based on those factors. I can share with you a report that I shared with the board last April that we're working with a consultant, Millpont, that does that pre-qualification for us on all of those factors to make sure that we're working with the companies that have the highest integrity, because we want to make sure that the carbon credit projects have a high integrity.
I think that would be
So-
really useful for the new commissioners, since they haven't seen it and delved into this as much as we have.
That would be helpful. So should we regard this revenue line or revenue stream like we regard a commodity, so to speak? That we're putting a bushel of corn on the market, or
Yeah, I think so.
or
I mean,
a
we're
hundredweight
tracking,
hundredweight of beef or whatever.
we can, through the information provided to us by the project developers, we can track the number of credits that were generated on our property, the revenue we received. This is a new line of business with these new units created. We also track wetland credits sold, stream credits and things like that.
Is it, so like any market, economic market, it could be conceivably subject to not inflation, but speculation that's unfounded or not?
Or despeculation.
Yeah, I think rather than a commodity, I would view this as a derivative, and I think that's how markets kind of view it because it's a service, not an actual good.
Okay, all right, that's helpful to me.
Yeah,
Derivative, okay.
so I just would add that, and I think as far as I think supply and demand plays a role here. To your question about speculation, I would say the more demand, the higher the price, that sort of thing. I don't know if people are actually speculating.
You're not allowed to speculate.
Yeah.
So you can't buy a credit, hold it and sell it to someone else. You can only sell it once it's purchased by the company that wants to create that carbon offset. It's retired. You can't bank them and speculate on it.
Can't speculate, you can't do credit default swaps and all sorts of creative speculation. Got it, okay.
Because they're really buying it for a purpose to fulfill a public commitment they made about their greenhouse gas emissions. So that's where the purpose in the application.
Just from, pardon me,
Oh, please.
No,
go ahead. From a competitive point of view, why wouldn't they go to more fertile kind of lands in the Midwest and that? I mean, how are we able to compete for?
Oh, that's a great question. Because there are companies that really want to buy for credits in Colorado. If they're a Colorado-based company and you want to offset your carbon, do you really want to go to Alabama or Iowa or whatever? And so that's one reason. There's also beef companies that want to work with lands that where the beef is raised and grown. They want to offset within certain parameters. So in addition to what the credit is actually capturing, the carbon versus these additional benefits, there is location-based preference sometimes. And a lot of companies that are buying carbon credits want a portfolio. They want some that are nature-based. The nature-based carbon projects don't sequester as much, but they're very attractive.
Yes.
People, rather than an industrial option where you can put concentrated oil and gas in the ground or gas or whatever, the fact that you can do nature-based ones, replanting trees, those are very attractive to a lot of companies. And so even though I acknowledge that we don't have the volume of carbon credits that are being sequestered in the soil in Colorado because of our aridness, we have 2/3 of our ownership on the Eastern Plains. It's an opportunity for us to generate revenue.
And you've done a great job to take advantage of it. One thing before when we wrap up here, I think I'd offer that it might be nice for you to host maybe a workshop again for like an hour.
For the board?
For commissioners, maybe we can notice it separate from all the other goings on, optional. But Commissioner Harvey might enjoy it. I'm always up for a refresher about markets. Things are constantly changing. So
Right.
I would just offer that as being maybe a great thing to do.
I'd love to do that.
Okay.
Mhm.
Seeing no other hands or questions, how about we see if there's any public comment on this issue?
Sing along online, I'd like to make a public comment on this agenda item, is the raise hand function on Zoom. I do not see any hands raised.
All right, any comments from commissioners before we ask for a motion?
Yeah, I've just been reflecting on where we started to where we are now, and it's pretty remarkable. The first time you brought this forward, I was like, what are we talking about? And now it's a real line of business for us, and that's quite an achievement, Mindy. So thank you.
Yeah, really.
I didn't do it alone, believe me.
Yeah.
I understood, but still a remarkable achievement.
Yeah, and I'd offer too that part of what's taken so long is, and a little bit to your point, Commissioner Pribble, the carbon credit market has endured a lot of ups and downs, a lot of lack of trust and transparency with different credits. So the extra time we've been very careful. We now have a roster of approved developers. We now have agreements that feel like they protect us as well as unlock the revenue. So that's really how you build a program in an emerging sector. And so I think that the folks that are buying credits from our projects will also see that, and those credits will be very attractive. So on this matter, it seems like too that the things that are outside of our policy, I agree with you on the land that we need to renew the lease in order to unlock the revenue. We get to be part of a larger party. And these parcels are pretty much incorporated into this ranch. So not at much risk of further, leasing activity or extra stuff. So with that, I'd love to see a motion based on the recommendation from the staff.
With this very long word.
No, please go back.
No, we're gonna, and you know what, Commissioners, it's okay to say, I move that we adopt the recommendation and
Yeah,
the board order.
I'll make a motion that I move that we approve the payment for Ecosystem Services lease for AG 113718, subject to the terms presented by staff and listed in the board order as presented.
Thank you for the motion, Commissioner Scanlon. I have a second.
Second.
Second, Commissioner Heath. All right, Commissioner Harvey, how would you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Privel?
Aye.
Commissioner Heath? Aye. Commissioner Scanlon?
Aye.
Chair votes yes, motion carries 5-0. Mindy, again, thanks for your good work on this.
Pleasure.
Mindy, we were on new territory here.
Yeah.
And you really have done a remarkable job of explaining this and bringing the credibility that you have demonstrated in other areas to this project. So.
There's a whole team behind me
Yes.
that have met frequently.
Tell your whole
Yeah.
team. Please share that with your whole team.
One of them's probably working on it right now.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, out junction.
Good morning, Commissioners. Elliot Hoyt, Assistant Director of Sustainability and Working Lands. This morning, I'm here to present an update on the potential disposal of a portion of the Dow Junction State Trust land parcel. This is a final action item involving information that was discussed in executive session earlier this morning. That information is in tab 1. And the board cover sheet and exhibits which are in tab 4 of your packet. This transaction is an excellent opportunity to partner with stakeholders in the Eagle River Valley, with whom we've been working for many years on a project that will bring much needed community housing and other resources to the region. So we're very excited with the progress that we're making here and that we're going to present. Just to orient everyone, this is an original school section, a section 16 in Eagle County. It spans Interstate 70 and the Eagle River. You can see that it's adjacent to the town of Avon and in close proximity to Vale and Minturn and Edwards and the whole Eagle River Valley. This is the portion of land that we're considering disposing. It is totals a little more than 76 acres. It includes 3 components to them. Parcel 1, shaded in red here, which is adjacent to Highway 6 and is so available for immediate construction. The utilities are right up to the edge of it. It's what someone might call a pad-ready site. There's a portion of the Eagle River that runs through the property. It includes areas for future parks, and it also has the potential for continued recreational access to the river, which has been very important to the community. We've been working with Eagle County on temporary access for the last couple of seasons for boating and fishing, and that is anticipated to continue and to actually improve, to actually put some improvements in it through this process. And then there's the land that's in sort of an orange color there. There's about 53 acres there, some of which is steep slope. You can see the dotted line above that steep slope, but there's a portion of that land that is potential for development. So Town of Avon has expressed a strong interest in banking that land for future growth. And so that has been part of the discussion with them. So the board is authorized by statute to do transact with land in a particular way that is a direct exchange with governmental bodies or special districts. That statute has certain parameters to make sure that beneficiaries, get a fair value for the land that's being transacted. So one of those is that there has to be a fair market value that is part of the transaction. And that's something that the board determines through independent appraisals. And that's a conversation that we had in executive session. It also needs to be noticed publicly, and that's what the action is in front of you now, is whether or not the board is making a decision to make public notice of the intent to do this. We can't have more than 2 transactions per year, but we have room to fit this into the calendar. And there also are certain criteria that it needs to meet. In this particular case, the criteria is that this exchange will benefit the board's operations in terms of efficiency of how we're doing business. So that's sort of quick and to the point, because this is a topic that's been before you before, and this is really a step along a path. And in particular, the step that the staff is recommending is that the board proceed with public notice of intent to do a direct exchange with the town of Avon for the parcel of land that has been presented here. Following that public notice, which has to be a minimum of 60 days, we'll come back to the board and we will ask you to review and consider an agreement that we've negotiated with the town of Avon for the exchange. So at the moment, what we're asking for is whether or not you want to move forward with direct exchange on this parcel. So any questions for me? I also will note that Eric Heil, the town manager for the town of Avon, is online if you had questions for him. But I'm available to answer any questions you have for me.
Thank you. Here's, thank you. Can you just help me understand about the direct exchange when you said that can't be more than 2 1 year, and that's states here, so we would be just starting a new year. So
Yes.
this would be 1, 2.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
And how does that work in terms of others who might have expressed an interest in?
Excellent question. And as you know, we have conversations with various government entities on a fairly regular basis. There are parcels of land that the board has that entities have expressed interest in. So Matt LaFontaine and the real estate team keeps a list and we track those. You also know that these transactions tend to take a little while. So we're always sort of playing that game a little bit to see is something look like it's really coming to a point, and also asking questions about how important is the timing to our partner on the other side. Is there something about the financing? Is there something about some other aspect of the deal that something needs to move up in the queue so that we get it done in a particular time frame? So really, it's a bit of a juggling match and playing games with where it sits on the calendar. I think you will also notice that we don't typically do 2 every year. So as much pressure as it seems that there is, we seem to always be able to fit them in. So, but it's an excellent point that we are limited in what we can do with this because it's a very special privileged transaction, right? And so I think that's part of why the statute limited it.
I got a couple of questions, but I think the first one, probably the town manager, welcome, and it's probably directed to you. I guess the question would be, the town of Avon confident about your funding sources for the acquisition, and what are they? That's number one. Number two, are you going to engage a developer, or do you develop the housing property yourself? How does that process work?
I believe that Eric Heil, town manager, would be the best person to answer that. I believe Eric is online. I think we need to promote him. We do. Okay.
Hello, everyone. I think I've been promoted, and can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Good afternoon or good morning, and thank you. And I appreciate being able to join your meeting this morning. As I was being promoted, I only heard part of the first question. And if you could repeat that first question, please.
Yeah, this is Jim Preble. So the question is, your confidence in your sources of funding to complete the transaction. That's the first part of the question. Then secondly, to actually develop the housing, do you engage a third party housing developer, or does the town of Avon manage it, the construction project itself?
Thank you, sir. Those are both good questions. So I trust Elliot had explained to you that we've submitted a grant application to Prop 123 land banking funds. And so I think that is a pivotal funding amount, and I'm hoping to hear back from them soon. We've asked for 2.9 million, and they have not told us that the grant has been not approved. But they also really like to see properties under contract. So with this transaction and the unique procedures and steps with the state land board, that's been a little different than the typical transaction and working with CHFA, the Colorado Housing and Finance Authority. And so I think that's going to work out the way all the conversations and presentation have been. I'm hoping to hear back from them positively in the next 2 to 3 weeks that grant has been awarded. If they do make the award because of this process that's contingent on your 60-day notice, I'm sure their award would be contingent on this process going to fruition and the commitment to then approve the contract and go to closing. I can tell you for the remainder of the property, the town of Avon has funds available, and we're presenting to council that now that it looks like we've got this contract signed with a number, that we would make an appropriation so that we can go to closing with the balance of the property, the balance of the amount due for the purchase price just from the town of Avon's funds. Now, at the same time, we are continuing, as we have been for the last few years, to work very closely with the town of Vail and Eagle County on a potential partnership. It is very common in all of these ski resort, mountain resort areas that housing is very important, but regional partnerships are very complicated and involve a lot of collaboration. And so we're pursuing that and hope to be successful with that. And we also think there's other potential financial partners from some of our large employers and Habitat for Humanity that may also be interested in this. But having the property officially under contract with a price that's fixed will help us be able to move forward in a more concrete business-like manner with those potential partners, because then we know what we're working towards. Your second question of how we would develop it is a great question, and we look at that delivery method quite a bit, and it can be either. That we have examples where and Town of Vail's got a couple projects right now where they've contracted with a developer. They provide significant public subsidies. They provide municipal bond financing that has the advantage of the tax exempt rates, but they contract with a developer, and there's typically a developer fee that goes along with that. And then the developer takes the risk of managing a contractor and all the other parts and pieces of development to get a project built and delivered. We also have examples, and Eagle County has been one that has just managed projects directly, where they hire the architects, designers, and the contractor directly and oversee that project like they would any other construction of a public facility. So we have not gotten to the point of exactly what the project would be or what the right approach would be. But we have lots of examples of doing it either way. And I think it's, we have to be, at least from the town of Avon, a little open-minded to see how the partnership structure for funding comes together and what those preferences are for potential development of the property. And the last aspect I would say, and this is where I feel like we're on the chicken and egg carousel with all these projects that are incredibly complicated. But we know it'll need public subsidies. And so if we go back to Prop 123 and ask for funds, or if we apply for middle income housing tax credits, those require projects to advance to a certain degree of schematic drawings that can be 700 to 900,000. That's a point we'd almost gotten to with this project in order to even apply for those other grant funds to help with that capital stack, or contributions from all the different financing sources to put a complete project together. So I think we've got good experience, and we're ready to proceed on all those fronts. And this is a huge milestone in the project to have the property under contract with a fixed price, and we are ready to move forward with all the next steps of partners and putting together an actual project that we can pursue.
Now, if I may, a follow-up, do you have a sense of how many units, and will they all be either deed restricted or considered affordable housing, or will some be market rate? Can you talk at all about the possibilities of the housing?
Yes, great question. So we've always been contemplating there would be at least 100 units. We think it's 4 acres developable. It potentially could be more, and we have demand for plenty more. As an example, the Timber Ridge project, which is 2/3 completed in the town of Vale, is 300 units on 5 acres. So there's, I don't know if we would do something that dense, but there's certainly the potential that we could look at more. But we've always been contemplating at least 100 units on the 4 acres. And they will all be deed restricted. And because we're applying to Prop 123 funding through CHAFA, it will be required to meet their guidelines for affordability. Now, one of the things we're doing is, as other mountain communities have done, we've submitted a waiver so that we could apply for funds that can support projects up to 100% AMI for rental or 140% AMI for ownership. And the town of Avon and Eagle County have been very active with looking at a regional housing authority. We call this project Regional Housing Solutions. We've been very active with looking throughout from all of Eagle County for the last year on how we work together. What we've heard from all those meetings is that there has been a large volume of rental projects that have been built or are under construction, and we're hearing that from a lot of different communities and a lot of different business owners that middle income ownership is really what the highest demand is at the moment. And so once we find out who is going to partner with us financially, I think we're going to have the conversation of do we look at a 100% AMI rental project, or do we look at a ownership project that could maybe be as high as 140%. And the last thing I'll say with that, and there's many layers of complexity, is even if we do something that we work towards 140%, in working with our partners, and Habitat for Humanity is a very good partner in Eagle County. They oftentimes will come in and help get some portion of the units down to a lower, more affordable level. And then with that, I would contemplate, again, 100% of the units will be deed restricted. And if we do that ownership, they will all be price capped. And so they'll, whatever the sales price is, it'll have a cap on appreciation so that it remains affordable in perpetuity.
Thank you.
Yes.
If I, sorry, just to add one thing, Eric was referring to when he said 4 acres, that's that first, pad ready site that's ready to go. There's also the land banking of the north side of the river, which is obviously a much longer play further out. Obviously, there's additional capacity on that land, but it's the focus right now is obviously the piece that's ready to go now, and that's at least 100. Seems like is a good bet, and possibly more, depending on how you work it out.
Thank you, Elliot. If I could just add, on the north side, that would be 100% deed restricted also. In our plan, our 3-mile plan, when we had worked with the state land board, contemplates that as many as 200 units could be built on the north side.
Thank you for your availability this morning. Can you say a little bit about the demographics of who will be there, kind of seeing these multi-family, or are you seeing it more? Just talk a little bit about who will be coming.
So on the ownership side, and we've had a couple different programs of like Timber Ridge is a brand new construction project in Vale. And but then we've also been active with what we call buyer assistance, where Vale, Avon, Eagle County will contribute towards purchasing a unit. And then that comes with putting a deed restriction on that unit. And that's been cost effective because we have a lot of older condominium and multifamily housing stock where the price per square foot is much better than brand new construction. And so I think it's really rewarding. I mean, we're kind of seeing the whole range of, I think, what we would all consider middle class, working class, teachers and restaurant chefs and business managers and accountants and daycare workers. And it's our communities up here tend to be small and we see each other. And it's when you say the demographic, it's the us people. It's the people that live here and work at the jobs here. And that spans from lower middle class maybe to upper middle class, but everyone, I mean, there's free market is just not attainable anymore. We see homes starting at 2-3 million, and multifamily, especially with new construction, starting at $1 million a bedroom to purchase. So pretty much everybody who works here, whether they've got a good job or a entry-level job, needs some type of assistance for housing.
If I could continue, thanks. You mentioned there are a diverse group of folks, and certainly the daycare workers are not going to be making the kind of money that the others you describe in there. Will there in fact be units that some of those lower income people can afford?
So I can't say what the unit mix is right now. That's we would have to go through design process and look at what the estimated costs would be. We know it's going to take some subsidy. I'm optimistic that with our partners, we could get some units to be accessible at a lower AMI. As an example, at Timber Ridge in Vale, that started with 300 units that had no price cap. It's what we call resident occupied. And so it can't be a second home. It can't be a short-term rental. It has to be somebody who actually lives in the county. And so the 2 bedrooms, I think, are around 700,000, and the 3 and 4 bedrooms are around 900,000. And, that's certainly cheaper than the free market condominiums in Vale, but most people would say that's expensive and not really affordable. Well, Town of Vale partnered with Eagle County and with Habitat for Humanity to be able to get 30 of those units purchased down to a price point where they're affordable at an 80% AMI level. And so that's been really phenomenal. It's taking a $700,000 or $800,000 unit and getting it down to about 350,000 and making that available to a much lower household income. That then comes with a price cap to keep it. But just to illustrate the complexity, those buy downs required 500,000 per unit to get that price down to that affordable level. And so it just becomes a financial equation of what's available and then how to allocate that to what the demand is.
Thank you. Thank you. That's very helpful.
Thank you for joining us. Commissioner Harvey, doesn't look like you have any questions.
No, good to hear all this information. Thank you.
So let's see if there's any public comment on this issue.
Absolutely. Folks listening along online, please, if you'd like to make a public comment on this agenda item, please use the raise hand function on Zoom. Commissioner From, I'm not seeing any hand raised.
All right, I'd welcome a motion.
If I may, Madam Chair, interestingly enough, Commissioner Harvey and I were up for confirmation in General Assembly last spring. Dow Junction was raised by the chair of the committee. And there's been a lot of legislative interest in pursuing this project with the town of Vale and Eagle County and so on. So I'm quite pleased that the board and staff, particularly and board, has worked its way through this process, and happy to make this motion. So it is board order number 2026. Board determines the best interest to commence disposal of the South Junction transfer property as shown in Exhibit A, etc., as found on page 21 of our board packet. So I move approval of that motion.
And Madam Chair, I planned a second, but I want to say, I think we should acknowledge, particularly today, that this is an original school section. And to think that 150 years later, when we looked at the various uses for state land, it's interesting that this has come forward. So I just think it is
It's
so
very timely and relevant. Yeah,
context. Yeah.
that's terrific context. And thank you for that. Any other thoughts before we move to a second?
No, I just want to compliment all the work that's been done. Appreciate you, appreciate the town sticking with this. And it's been a bit of a journey, but I'm very pleased with where we've ended.
Yes, Eric, this is very exciting for us. It has been a long and challenging and interesting path, and it's just really exciting that we can move to the public notice aspect of this and get you all into contracts so you can proceed to make this a successful project.
Absolutely.
We just have to hope there's snow.
Yeah. May I have a second then for this?
Josie's.
Okay, Commissioner Heath, yes. All right, and let's see, Commissioner Harvey, how do you vote on this?
Aye.
Commissioner Pribble?
Aye.
Commissioner Heath?
Aye.
Commissioner Scanlon?
Aye.
Chair votes yes, motion carries 5-0. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
This is really a great achievement.
Yeah, thank you, LA.
Absolutely.
How's everybody doing? Can we run through the rest of the agenda and then take a quick break before we do the information?
But we were going to pause.
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. Matt LaFontaine, Real Estate Program Manager. And have in front of you today a final action item, which is our patent adoption. And a policy review for our acquisition and disposition policy. And these two are pretty related, as you will see. Okay. The board disposes of real property from time to time when we do our transactions, and it typically conveys land via an instrument called a patent. And up on your screen here is just a screenshot of what a historic one looks like. The precise form of a patent is not statutorily defined, and it's based on a combination of historic precedent, statutory requirements and reservations, and board discretion. Board patents include the necessary language to effect a legal conveyance, and they also include numerous reservations, which I'll dive into shortly. These reservations are either statutory in nature or they're discretionary to the board. And part of what today's item does is kind of explains the distinction between the two and clarifies what, if any, can be waived by the board in what circumstances. Board records indicate that the first patent number 1, was issued to a David Kerr in Boulder County on September 28, 1878. And that has started a long string of subsequent patents. To date, the State Land Board have issued approximately 8,600. Early patents were issued from large pre-printed books, and changes in reservations were written by hand. And what you'll actually see up here is a page out of that book. They were written in duplicate. The actual patent would be given to the grantee who would then take it to the county where it would once again be handwritten into the county records and retained by the owner. And then we have our records here, the physical records in the State Land Board offices, which are pretty neat to look through. But you'll see the kind of pre-printed nature of this and then all of the beautiful cursive that has the reservations handwritten down below. Today, unfortunately, our patents are electronically generated, so not quite as neat. But what that has led to is incremental changes over time, and we'd like to move to a standardization of the patent form. Sign off on it today in its existing current form, and then we'll make sure that that stays stable going forward in the same manner that these pre-printed books did in the past. The 3 objectives today for the board. One is to adopt the patent form as it currently exists. The second is to align the patent reservations within our acquisition disposition policy. And since we're opening that up a little bit early, we'll also complete the triennial review of the acquisition disposition policy. All right, our patent form today, which is Exhibit 1 to the board materials, looks like what's shown up on the screen. That's kind of the starting page of it, but it was recently reviewed and updated between staff and our AG team. It includes all of our statutory and discretionary reservations. Those are designed to protect the interests of the trust for current and future beneficiaries. And this is a form that will allow us to continue to utilize it for our NSE process, so our land sales over. Okay, I mentioned 2 important types of reservations that exist within our patents. If I go down the statutory column here on the left first, those that are statutory and not at the discretion of the board are the entirety of the mineral estate. Geothermal resources, which includes water associated with and necessary for the geothermal resource to be utilized, which starts getting into the weeds on that definition, but spelled out beautifully by our attorneys in the patent form. And then archaeological resources, which are always reserved to the state upon disposal. That includes paleontological resources. Discretionary reservations, which have been historically done to protect the board's the trust interests, but are waivable by the board, are the pore space reservation, the non-geothermal, non-tributary, and not non-tributary groundwater, and easements to adjacent trust lands. So often, if we're disposing of, say, a parcel that could provide access to a neighboring state trust land that's going to be reserved for the trust, then we'll also reserve an easement to ensure that we don't sever our access unintentionally. And then all of these reservations also include the necessary access to access and work the resources being reserved. Okay, Exhibit 3 to the board materials is a red line that shows changes between the existing acquisition disposition policy and the proposed acquisition disposition policy. These changes are designed really to hit these 4 kind of things up top. 1 is to tie to the new strategic plan. 2 is to incorporate our direct exchange authority. Dow Junction is going to be done under this authority, but it wasn't explicitly stated in our policy, so we're adding that in. We're adding a reference to the mechanics lien statute that's up there as number 3. That has been historically put into our patents to ensure that our reserve interest doesn't become subject to a mechanics lien and that there's proper posting to that effect done on the property going forward. So we've added that in. It's been a long-standing component within our patent form. And then lastly, adding in a delegation to staff to work with the AG's office when appropriate to utilize other deed forms. So the patent is really the specialty kind of deed, but there are times where the market demands a different kind of deed be utilized. For example, water rights or resale of commercial properties, which a patent would be the wrong instrument to use. So it might be a bargain and sale deed or equivalent deed. And that really highlights the proposed changes. The recommendation today is to adopt the patent form as exists, as recently reviewed by our AG team and staff, and then to approve the revised acquisition disposition policy. But at this time, if there are any questions as to any of the exhibits or the changes proposed or the patent, I'm happy to take that.
Clarifying questions, anyone? No, thank you for that fulsome discussion. Anybody online?
Folks
Have any
listening,
comments?
folks listening along online, if you'd like to make a public comment on this agenda item, please use the raise hand function on Zoom. Which you're probably not seeing.
Thank you. Well, it appears that these are very integrated, actions and time to do it. And they look well conceived, so. Any other further comments by any commissioners, or I would welcome a motion.
I will make a motion after consideration of the materials presented today. And in our packet, the board determines it's in the best interest of the trust to adopt the proposed form of patent and to approve the proposed modifications to the real estate acquisition disposition policy of 003.
May I have a second?
Okay.
Right. Commissioner Kribel, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Harvey?
Aye.
Commissioner Heath? Aye. Commissioner Scanlon?
Aye.
And the chair votes yes. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you very much, Matt.
Thank you.
These are cool. Yeah.
It was very much a statement. Coolness.
Good morning, commissioners. This is Deputy Director Nick Massey here to present a request for your approval on some revisions to lease actions policy 200-004. Perhaps not as exciting as the patent adoption policy, but just as important nonetheless. So 200-004 is a bit of an overarching policy that helps staff be consistent in working with the board to set other policies that are related to leasing. It sets some very general guidelines on how we wish to behave as an organization when it comes to leasing. Most recently, we've had a bit of an uptick in requests for review come to the board. And we've gotten plenty of helpful feedback that says we could be doing it a little bit better. Or it would benefit from some revision that would make it clearer on how exactly we behave in requests for review. And so I bring to you revisions to this policy because this is where requests for review functions live. In your board packet, you're presented with the existing policy, some red line, and a final version of the policy. And I think the thing to spend just a moment raising again is the revisions that we're suggesting to the request for review section, which is section 2C. And in those revisions, we step into the question of exactly what does 30-day notice mean. That's been it's been a place where we want to make sure that we are both clear to the board as well as to our lessees. So there's some language in there too that says that the policy overrides what we may have documented in some other places. In some of our lease documents and some other, perhaps other policies, we may, well, as we've seen in some of the requests, in one of the requests for reviews that came up, we had a bit of a conflict in what exactly 30 days was. And so this policy says, this policy rules, it's going to be the first business day after the weekend or the holiday, if the due date should fall on that. And then we wanted to include language that supports lessees presenting their request for review to be as comprehensive as possible, as thorough as possible in the materials that they're presenting to us so that staff can provide as much helpful information to the board when considering that request for review as possible. there's also a clarification in here that the request for review function is not determined in statute. This is a right or an option that's extended by the board to the lessees of trust lands. So again, some important clarifications. I didn't have much more planned to say about it, so I welcome any questions you have or if you'd like to discuss. Let me know.
Anybody have questions? Okay, let's see if the public has any comment before we discuss the matter.
Folks listening along online, if you'd like to make a public comment on this agenda item, please use the raise hand function on Zoom. I'm not seeing any hands raised.
Commissioner Preble?
Nick, so does this address in part the issue of confusion we had with some Lacey and Eastern Plains? I don't want to point to the names, but I remember several meetings back, whether it was a request for review, date confusion.
Yeah, this is stepping into that directly. This says once and for all what the 30-day deadline means in all cases as concerns requests for review.
Right. And so should it be or how is it communicated to the Lacey community so that there's nobody out there looking at the old policy?
Counselor, you have your hand up pretty quick there.
Yeah, I want to it doesn't have quite that broad an impact. It has the impact for deadlines for submitting a request for review. So just on this policy would not impact a scenario. We are in the process of aligning all our deadlines to meet this and making sure that is clear to all parties. But this isn't a global deadline statement regarding holidays and weekends.
Is a global statement required at some point or desired? Required or desired?
No, I can answer required, no. Desired, that's sort of more your purview.
Thank you.
I think the best practice will be to clean up each and every instance where we have that, because we'll always, as long as there's any potential argument for an inconsistency, the global statement will have limited effect. It's hard to.
So are we on a process to?
We are.
We are to clean this all up.
Yes.
All right. Well, very good. I commend you as always.
Thank you, Commissioner Preble. Commissioner Harvey, you have a question?
For that.
Yeah, Nick, can you remind me, can any lessee or anyone applying for a project or lessees or people applying for projects do a request for review, or do you guys evaluate whether it's frivolous or not? I can't remember what you said about that.
In the policy, there's existing language that we have not amended at all that says if you're a person or entity with business with the state land board and you disagree with the staff decision, you have that ability to request a review of staff's decision. And so you use the word frivolous. I don't know that language doesn't help identify what might be or might not be frivolous. But it just casts that definition that you have to have business with us to make that request for review.
Okay, so if someone has business with a state land board, it's kind of, they have 100% right to come before the board. Is that my understanding?
If I may, this is Ed Hamrick. So the purpose of the request for review came about as the board started delegating decisions to staff. Once upon a time, the board basically reviewed each lease individually. And over time, many routine ministerial decisions have been delegated to staff. But ultimately, those decisions are still the board collectively and the commissioner's decisions. And so when a party who is in that process of a delegated decision disagrees with the decision, right may be strong, but in practice, they are able to come to the board and say, you've delegated this decision to your staff. We don't think it's right for these reasons. We'd like you to consider it yourself because you are the ultimate decision maker. So in this case, please decide Y instead of X.
Okay.
Whatever that is. And that is generally broadly allowed. Again, I don't know that I'd go so far to say it's a right, but it's broadly allowed in that. And when they are frivolous, so the alternative of it coming to the board, because they definitely have a right to appeal final board decisions to the district court. So the alternative, if it is not brought at least first to the commissioners, is they go straight to court.
Got it.
Typically, this process is a process before the person with a request goes to court, they come and talk to you directly. And sometimes you as commissioners say, that's pretty frivolous. And sometimes you say, that's really interesting and great. And we appreciate it being brought forth, but we still adopt the path that staff originally adopted. And sometimes you say, yes, on further reflection, we think, often staff has followed all our guidelines, but because our guidelines can't accept every permutation, this one, we'd rather go a different direction, and it's our decision to do so. That's kind of the whole overall process. So I'm sorry.
Too much, taking up too much time at our meetings. If there should be an abbreviated thing where the board, the staff brings the request for review to the board prior, and then the board decides if it wants to hear the full blown thing. But it also sounds like this is a good buffer to maybe avoid some lawsuits. So it's probably not a good idea.
Yes, Assistant Director Massey.
Commissioner Harvey, having heard your thought on that in a previous meeting, and we wrestled with it between staff and attorneys a little bit. The final component being added to that policy asks for substantive arguments, bringing a full and complete and well documented argument for your request for review. And that was by design trying to try to address what potentially could look, or try to eliminate what might feel like frivolous. Raising a standard to say, when you make that request, make it meaningful, make it
right,
strong, and that makes good use of the board's time. To have that two-step process there, in my opinion, there wasn't a good way to sort of build that into the policy. And so that's kind of where we landed with these edits.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Scanlon?
Yeah, thanks. I'll just kind of chime in. I think I was gonna comment on exactly that piece, the completeness of it. Because what is really disconcerting is when we're blindsided by something staff didn't know was gonna be an argument. And so we're then caught cold with a cold response that you all haven't had any chance to review either. So I really appreciate that. And I think piling in more focus on the substance will help with the subjective nature of the scoring, right? Because I think that's where we get a lot of these. Well, we disagree with how this was scored because actually we're good stewards, blah, blah, blah. And so I think more and more we can focus on the substance, the less we are subjected to this kind of, we disagree with staff's thinking on this. So I really appreciate that. And I really, really don't like when we are caught and the staff is caught off guard with whatever a lawyer deemed is a great argument about whatever random point. So I think that might take down some of this in terms of what actually happens before us, because staff could address those points before it comes to us, and maybe then there is not a request that results from it.
Yeah.
To Commissioner Harvey's point.
Yeah, so I'd like to add, I mean, that is, so inside this, what we're doing is giving ourselves some protection from that.
Right.
In that, the requests, need to be fully documented. And if the requester does not include that information and yet brings it up at the meeting, like we did before, the board does not have to consider that argument or that information. And this policy is giving us the flexibility, which we took last time. So it's sort of codifying how we handled it last time, which is this is new information. We need to table it. We can table it to another meeting. We could table it to the end of the meeting. So it gives us the flexibility and lets us realize that to that point of the right, Commissioner Harvey, it isn't, it's a at the board's discretion. And there's a lot of good reasons to do it, but it is at our discretion. So, and thank you for the background, Counselor. I had lost track of that thread that, you know, they would go right to court, but the judge would probably send them back here anyway. But speculation on my part. Anyway, any other comments or sort of agreement or disagreement with how this policy has been modified?
I have a question for Ed. So we always have the option, like if something comes forward as a new piece of information, we do not have to decide that on the spot. We can say, you know what, we're gonna have this taken back to staff and we can revisit this at our next meeting. I think sometimes we're caught up in an urgency to make a decision. We don't have to do that. Am I correct with that?
This is Ed Hamrick, and I think that was very well said. On both points. I do think sometimes there's a sense of urgency in decision-making that the board feels. The board, both in request for review or any other decision matter that comes before the board. If the board wants information or something comes up that the commissioners haven't had enough time to consider, you are always able to put matters aside. As the chair said, either for later in the meeting to allow for it or move it to the next meeting. So that is always within you as a collective body's prerogative. And I encourage you to do that whenever you feel it's necessary. Rush decisions are poor decisions.
And to reinforce that, because we know we have outside audiences, we put that language directly in here. The board, you know, please know that if the request for review process is unsmooth because of your actions as a requester, it may delay things. The board may put things off.
Exactly.
And that could impact the continuity of the lease. There's nothing that says staff has to extend a lease that's expiring within that window or whatever. So we're trying to be as clear as we can with that and to help the board remember you have a lot of flexibility in how you approach.
I appreciate all this work because we've had some hard lessons learned. And I think this is giving us some guardrails, both for us and our lessees. And I think it's not only appropriate but needed.
I think it's great. Actually, it would be good to have the referenced in the board manual too of bringing on new board members.
Yeah.
You know, as we're learning through this, having it straight up in black and white that you have some discretion in terms of how you handle it.
No.
So apparently no more comment or discussion by commissioners. So let's see if the public has something to say. Have we already done it? I couldn't remember if we've done it for the one before, so I was being extra careful. All right, then, I would love it if somebody would come up with a motion on this.
Happy to do that. I move that after the materials presented in our packet and with our discussion today, the board determines it's in the best interest of the trust to approve the proposed modifications to the lease actions policy 200-004.
Thank you for that, Commissioner Scanlon. May I have a second?
Second.
Commissioner Heath, thank you. Commissioner Harvey, how do you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Pribble?
Aye.
Commissioner Heath? Aye. Commissioner Scanlon?
Aye.
Chair votes yes, motion carries 5-0. Thank you very much, Mr. Massey. Let me see if that.
Good morning, Commissioners. Andy Bissett for the Transactions and Record Services team. Here to present the August board leasing agenda. This month is comprised of 10 items. We have 5 bids made up of 3 agriculture and 2 recreation. 4 new leases, which includes 2 road access permits, 1 recreation lease, and 1 road. And then we have 1 extension, solar planning extension. Are there any questions on the exhibit to this item? I'm happy to answer any questions. But staff does recommend approval of the August 2026 board leasing agenda.
I do have a question, just in the case it was a typo. I love that we have 2 recreation leases and they're both sort of in eastern Colorado. And I know the size is different, 40 acres versus 640, but one bid $48.75 an acre and the other bid $11 an acre. So I'm guessing that's just a size difference, or is there something material?
Item 5, we have 48.75 was the opening bid and 53.75.
Oh, 50, the successful was 53, the opening bid was 48, and the other one is 478. And I was just curious, like the disparity between those 2 rates for hunting.
I have some information on
Oh,
that.
good, thank you.
The parcel, the 40-acre parcel does have access to the Arkansas River near Lamar, Colorado. And so the bids came in a little bit higher for that
A
parade.
lot higher, but I understand that.
Oh,
Great.
for the record, Alan.
On number 3, the spread between the AUMs is pretty significant there. And I see that you awarded the highest bid to that one, but can you just talk about why there might be such a spread?
$200 being the winning bid, that item.
Number 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Elliot, do you have any further information?
Yeah, Elliot Hoyt, Assistant Director of Sustainability and Working Lands. Excellent question. You'll see some of these bids, you know, in the $40, $50, $60 range that are coming in these days, and have spoken to some of the district managers about that. Very high numbers. It's a reflection of the cattle market right now that people are looking for land, looking for opportunities, and so the bidding is getting quite high. So your question about the spread, I think you know, the base rates are in the 20s, and yet people are coming in, you know, double, triple what those are. It's a reflection of that market and the constraint on the capacities right now, which it's good for us because we're getting good bid numbers, but it is in some ways is a troubling trend because you think, can people really afford to operate at that number? So very perceptive, and absolutely we're looking at that and tracking it and trying to understand how that's impacting people's abilities to manage the land.
Particularly in a drought. That's sort of, but maybe it's new grass for them.
And that is a tier 1.
Yeah.
All right, commissioners, any other questions for Andy or comments? Or any public comment on this item?
Folks listening along online, if you'd like to make a public comment on this agenda item, please use the raise hand function on Zoom.
Right then, I'd entertain a motion for approval of the board leasing agenda for August.
Madam Chair, I move the board adopt the board leasing agenda August 2026 as contained in our board packet.
Second.
Thank you for the second, Commissioner Pribble, and Commissioner Harvey, how would you vote?
Aye.
Commissioner Pribble? Commissioner Pribble?
Aye.
Commissioner Heath? Aye. Commissioner Scanlon? Aye. Chair votes yes. Board agenda is approved, 5-0. Thank you. And unless, do any of the commissioners have any changes, modifications, or comments relative to the minutes from last month's meeting? No? Okay, Rose Marino has something.
Yes, thank you, Chair Probe. So it was brought to my attention that on page 69 of the packet, that split vote on the Larimer County right-of-way did not indicate who voted which way. And so we are going to provide a correction in the next board meeting packet, just so that that is very clear.
Okay.
And that's all.
Thank you. I did not catch that. I consider that the minutes are approved by acclamation, subject to the modification to be presented in the next packet. All right, with that, I'm going to suggest we take a 10-minute break, commissioners and online audience, and then we'll reconvene for our information items.
Now we are.
Hi, welcome back everybody to the August meeting of the Colorado Board of Land Commissioners. And we're now in the information item portion of our agenda, which is updates and the opportunity for the commissioners to discuss and engage on items that don't need a final action decision. And as such, we generally do not take public comment when we're discussing information items, just for clarity. All right, take it away.
Good morning, Commissioners. Matt LaFontaine, Real Estate Program Manager.
Ben Teschner, Solid Minerals Manager.
And we are presenting this information item together. It is the Table Mountain Refi Disposal, which certainly has a transaction component. It's part of the Refi program, which I'll detail some aspects of, which is falling within the real estate section's purview. And there's a very significant mineral component to this property and hence Ben's involvement there. This is a picture of the property. You'll see some of the terrain that's there. You'll also see some military overflight that's occurring in this picture, which shows some of the proximity importance to Fort Carson, which we'll also dive into. Okay, so quick REPI recap. REPI is the Readiness and Environmental Protection Integration Program. It's funding. It's a funding program that DoD has that ensures that training and operations around critical military installations can be preserved, and they do that typically through acquiring conservation easements to kind of protect those interests. Starting back in 2019, the State Land Board was approached by representatives from Department of Defense and the conservation community about certain properties that are within our portfolio that kind of have this nexus of interest between the military and conservation and our operations. And so there are 6 properties that are considered under this framework. And I will highlight those. Each one is associated with a certain military installations interest. So REPI funds go to the installations then kind of prioritize, which properties they seek to protect. This is a map that shows the Colorado Springs area. 3 military installations down here that are involved with this, with the State Land Board revenue lands. Those are the Air Force Academy, which has interest in Bohart, Big Springs, and Edison. You'll see those all underlie these kind of green polygons, which are aerial training areas. So areas that they do maneuvers with their planes and so on. And in fact, on Bohart, there's actually a runway that they do touch and goes. That's called Bullseye. This is Schriever here. We actually don't own this section anymore. The board conveyed that 3 years ago to Department of the Air Force, but the lands that are involved are adjacent to and to the west and south of Schriever. And then there are 2 properties that are of interest to Fort Carson, which is this large black outlined installation here. And those are the relatively small Aiken Canyon Preserve and what we're going to discuss today, which is this almost 10,000 acre Table Mountain property. We've called this REPI historically because that's the name of the funding program. It also goes by another kind of collective name, which is SOAR, and that stands for Security, Open Space, and Agricultural Resilience. So you'll see that used, then those two used kind of interchangeably. Okay, so zooming in on Table Mountain. Again, kind of just west of Fort Carson here. With this large tract of state trust land here, you'll see it's adjacent to BLM lands. And then this entire area over here is Fort Carson, so under federal ownership. And just with the topography and the nature of the ownership, there's a large kind of cohesive corridor of conservable lands that exist here with the base of the federal ownership of the state trust land. And then east private lands to the south as well. I'll point out that the Beaver Creek State Wildlife Area is over here on the west. This is actually CPW owned land. So it's shown as blue because it's state ownership, but it's not state trust land. The rest is our property is has a compatible use, which is the hunting and fishing access program. And we'll go into the leases and uses on the land momentarily. You'll see Highway 115 that runs in north-south and makes our eastern border. That provides terrific access to the property. A lot of the land on the east side is flatter, and then it starts getting up into more terrain as you go west. There are 2 major mine areas that we'll talk about shortly, and those are kind of in this area here, in this area here. And then I'd like to point out that this area to the north, which is in the direction of Colorado Springs, but also the gates of Fort Carson, is all private. And if we zoom in on it, you'll see that it's all platted, subdivided into large lots, some smaller, more dense subdivision, but really drives the argument that a suitable highest and best use for lands along 115, especially south of this area, is probably residential development. But I think when you can see the platting and as-built, it tells a little bit of a story with the picture. Okay.
So I'll jump in here and talk about the revenue we generate from Table Mountain in general, and then we're going to talk specifically about a handful of leases that would be particularly impacted by a disposal decision on these properties. These are the revenue generating leases that currently exist on Table Mountain, and this is for the revenues calculated here for calendar year 2025. And you can see that as a whole right now, these leases generate around $575,000 a year. Staff projects that many of these are going to grow faster than inflation over the next decade or so because of the many of the things that Matt's already talked about, and for some other things we're going to talk about here. I want to highlight going forward, and on these next couple slides, there are 3 mining leases on the property with effectively 2 operations. We have the GCC gypsum mine, which is this top line in the green, and then the Amrise, formerly known as Wholesome Stone Quarry, which is these two leases. So this is one operation and two different leases. We're also going to talk about a tower site on the property as well that generates significant revenue.
And you'll see the two top rows, there's an ag lease on the property and the hunting fishing.
Yes, and in addition. So if we look at sort of the property in general and what's currently been contemplated for disposal, you'll see that the two lease areas, this is the Wholesome Amrise Stone Quarry leases, there's actually two in here, and the GCC gypsum lease have been carved out of the original contemplated disposal. The original contemplated disposal is shown here in red and is approximately 9,300 acres. You'll see that there are two hashed areas, which we have current applications from these mines to expand their operations into these hashed areas. So the kind of orange hashing here is the Amrise proposed expansion, and the green hashing is the GCC proposed expansion. Importantly, both of these expansion areas are currently within the proposed disposal area. Matt, do you want to hit on that valuation?
Yeah, quickly. If you all recall, in January of this year, staff brought to the board an information item that updated the board on the status of our mineral valuation. Unlike the other REPI properties, which are not as significantly mineral in potential, this property derives the majority of the income to the trusts from minerals. And so staff recognized that it's critical that we find a way to preserve that economic benefit through any transaction that may transpire. So what we see here, this kind of fourth bullet, this valuation gap, is what staff identified as essentially the difference between a third party market appraisal report that we obtained for the mineral resources on the property, valued it at $3.45 million, and staff's own internal valuation of what the mineral resources were worth in the disposal area to the board, which was on a present value basis, $15 million. And that equates to about $50 million of gross revenue over time. And there's a lot of reasons that there's kind of this gap. Some of it has to do with our low cost of capital. Some of it has to do with the fact that we can't dispose of mineral resource at all. So it's a question of when and how it would be monetized versus if, looking at things through an intergenerational lens. But really found that there was a significant gap there. And while we can't sell the mineral estate, what we were contemplating was entering into some sort of no surface occupancy agreement that would keep the minerals in the ground for all intents and purposes. But the board would be compensated accordingly for this. Well, we weren't able to really bridge that gap. We've identified it. We've continued to have conversations about it. But coming out of the January board meeting, staff was given the guidance to also look at an alternative area that could resolve the mineral issue that we're kind of hung up on, and also provide some of the benefits to the interested other parties with this property if we were to proceed with the disposal. Did I miss anything on the valuation? I think that's good.
So in this next slide, we're going to kind of zoom in on this northern area where this activity is occurring. And you may recall from the original kind of blue overview map that there's a lot of more activity up in this northeastern piece of the property. I'll highlight that in addition to the lease areas themselves, these black dotted lines are access roads that travel from Highway 15 to the Amrise mine. And then there's one here also that goes into the GCC mine. And then there's a third that goes up to this tower site right here as well. If we did a disposal as currently contemplated, we anticipate that these mining areas have about 5 to 8 years of resources remaining. If we did a disposal and in effect denied these expansions, We would probably see revenue for a little longer because but at a tapered off level as those operators basically wind down the operations in these lease areas. If we did into disposal, we would also transfer the revenue from this tower site to the purchaser. And as I say, currently these generate about $250,000 each per year and $22K coming per year from the tower site. And so for these operations we're talking about here, that looks at about $522,000 a year. And given the present disposal configuration, we would anticipate that declines to near zero over the course of the next decade. So as we contemplated this board guidance around how, explore some other options, one of these options is to reconfigure this disposal area. And the logic of this reconfiguration was to say, hey, let's see if we can pull out these areas where we have applications for expansion, including the Amrise area, the GCC area, and then take care of keeping the surface around these access roads as well. And in addition, grab this little piece around at the tower site as well. So now we're preserving this revenue over the long term. We have the opportunity under this configuration to approve these expansions should we choose to do so. And we mitigate a lot of that mineral valuation risk that would have been associated with the other disposal area. We'd still maintain continuity with Fort Carson to the southeast, the state wildlife area, which is over here, and that BLM up here. And then with this also retains, if you recall from Matt's earlier, this is where this area we would keep. You'd see that this is where that residential development is, so we retain that opportunity for some point in the future as well. No, I think that's great. Okay. So under this new sort of disposal idea, we're now projecting a different financial future. And this sort of assumes that we approve these two lease expansions. We understand from David Rodenberg's analysis that this is a pretty high value tower site area, and we anticipate the co-location of additional tower sites here in the future. So we would project at least a doubling of the revenue coming from that tower site. From the plans expressed to us from Wholesome or Amrise and GCC, we expect these mines also to double in revenue over the next 10 years, assuming again that we enter into these expansions. And just for these operations, not including the hunting fishing access program and the rec and some of the other things that are happening on this parcel, around 2035, we're expecting somewhere in the neighborhood of 1.1, 1.2 million in revenue generations.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
I'm confused. Is that just for the expansion? Because the prior slide said that the existing 250 from each is on a decline curve to 0 and 10.
Right.
So 10 years from now, you're saying, well, you forecast in 10 years, we would get 1.1 million from the expansion areas?
Yes. So these, both of these operations would are ramping up. But that ramp up assumes the ability to move into the expansion areas, right? Because the existing resources in the current lease areas are finite.
And that's my clarification. So 1.1 million does not include any assumption of revenue from the existing mines.
Yeah, sort of. It is an assumption that these operations would have the ability to move. So we would see probably a movement in this direction of the pit area, right? Reclaiming behind them. And that expansion of operations. So I couldn't tell you exactly where that production is going to come from, but if you give this ability to expand, you allow that mine to design itself into that future. Does that make sense?
I think so. I just want to make sure we weren't double counting income that we thought was going away.
No, we wouldn't be double counting here. We would be this lease area would then collectively generate this
Okay,
for that.
even giving the decline curve.
Right, and we wouldn't be seeing the decline, we'd be seeing the ramp offense.
Right, because they're expanding more territory.
Correct, yeah. Yep. And seeing a long-term future, I think, in these properties as well. Right, so both of these, for example, this GCC is looking for approximately twice the amount of gypsum they currently produce per year. Right, into that future, and that's the doubling of revenue here. Right, so you're doing a faster mining of this area and into this other area. Does that make sense? I'm not sure I'm being super clear.
Good enough for now.
Yeah, okay. So, yes.
Can you speak again about the development potential on this parcel?
The real estate development? Absolutely.
So
Actually, here you go.
Next space. You'll see Highway 115 forming the eastern boundary of our property. That runs up and into Colorado Springs. Passes the north end of the base, goes by the gates of Madison. What we've seen over time has been a development of residential housing from north to south. It has stopped at our property because our property has not been otherwise available for development. Had our property been private historically, or if we had advertised it for development directly, I think that use would have continued down naturally based on the patterns that have emerged over time.
And, we all know that there's that potential for conflict with more residential development every time there's a board adjacent. So we have to assume that might not be approved.
That is always a possibility. Given the location of both of these and the current geography, I think it's highly likely that the permanent amendments to these would be approved. Are we talking about, the mining permits? Yeah, expansions would be approved.
It's approximately 1.5 miles or so to this boundary from the existing residential. Right. I would note that residential development is largely why the military is interested in permanent protection and conservation of this parcel, because that conflict that arises between residences and overhead uses and adjacent cannon artillery and aircraft and all of that smoke and so on causes problems and complaints and so on. Did you happen to mention where this goes?
Yeah, this gypsum mine here goes to the GCC limestone and cement plant, which is also on state land board property. And the board may remember approved a lease expansion over there, which would facilitate the increased capacity of that operation as well. So this would this expansion is really a value add. It has kind of a bigger value than even is shown here because it's its ability to support a second lease that we already have as well. So.
And I'll also note, I think this was implied, but the likelihood of the permitting being approved with a severed estate situation is very, very, very low. So it's only under a scenario in which the board owns the surface and the minerals that we think it's likely that these expansions would be permitted and developed.
Commissioner Frobe, I remember this was your first meeting, this epic discussion.
Oh, yeah, it really was.
And I just, none of us could have.
When I had forgotten it was, until it was referenced here, there was a 10-year framework. I mean, it was long, but I think that's something to consider as well.
Exactly.
Commissioner Harvey has his hand up.
Oh,
So Matt and Ben, can you remind me, is the military installation on the west or east side of this whole property?
On the east.
East side, okay. And what's the history of military condemning property if if they want to, you know, if they're worried about residential and how that's going to affect their operations, what's the danger of them condemning it?
No, I don't know the history of military condemnations enough to
Mhm.
speak intelligently on it. I do know that the state trust land is not condemnable.
Okay, period.
I will assert that strongly in this meeting. So I don't think it's a risk to us. And I think that, you know, REPI is kind of designed, as I understand it, to help kind of bridge that situation to the extent that that risk exists to anyone where they
Okay.
voluntarily pay for the conservation and protection.
Okay. And did they tender an offer already? I might have missed that.
No, we're much earlier in the process than that. REPI funding is a kind of applied for. Our conservation partners are out there putting plans together to kind of advocate for and obtain that funding over time. The REPI disposals are designed to occur in phases as those REPI funds become available or other funds become available.
Mhm.
And to reiterate with what I said about Bohart earlier, as an example, that one has its third phase upcoming. There will be 5 or 6 probably in total. So they're all kind of designed that way. There's a thought or hope that past success will kind of snowball into larger and larger allocations of REPI funding going forward. That would create fewer phases per transaction.
Okay. And did you say there was an appraisal for $3.45 million by outside appraisers, and then your internal appraisal was $15 million? Was that for the whole property? Was that my understanding?
No, so that was specific to the mineral estate.
Oh, okay.
The surface most recently appraised last year for $27.1 million for the 9,300 acres. But what we were working toward was a solution that would allow the board to get paid for the value of the minerals in exchange for giving up the opportunity to mine them through the surface. That's kind of a request that's been put forward to us because the mining can be disruptive and at odds with the other, the conservation effort and the REPI's the DOD's interest in terms of noise and dust and all of that stuff.
Right.
But I think it's a good question to say, where are we in this process? And it's actually why this is in front of the board today. The board has not approved the disposal of Table Mountain. Staff is very actively right now seeking the board's input and guidance as to what the board envisions doing with this property, whether it's a disposal, whether it's a long-term hold, and we'll go through some of the kind of potential paths on the next slide in that regard. These 2 mining leases for expansion have been applied for, and the board is going to presumably have to make a decision on them, which is kind of driving the timeline here. We can't kind of go both directions, and so staff needs a little bit of direction from the board as to what it prefers to do.
Right. And to be clear, one of these expansions, the GCC one, staff is prepared to bring you next month. And so, now we're at this little bit of a crossroads here where we need to understand that philosophy of what we want to do, big picture.
Thank you.
I mean, it seems to me, and this is within our context of our fiduciary responsibilities, that taking the option that provides the greatest financial opportunity for the board is the direction I think we should go. And, that REPI discussion, of course, was at an earlier time, but I think there's no question there's such potential with this property for us that I would be at least put forth for conversation here that we retain it.
I guess when I reviewed I was reviewing the package, and thank you for putting the original REPI thing in there too, to kind of get us back to where we were. And this was always, the fuzzy tail end, both time-wise and also value-wise, as I remember from our conversation. And I guess the question I have today and looking at everything is, I I guess I feel like, why do we need to make a decision today? I hear you. These guys aren't going to expand, as I understand from the materials, expand their mines for 6 or 8 years. They want to know. Of course they want to know. Of course they want to lock it in. I'd want to lock it in too, particularly if I knew the board's contemplating all these other disposals. But I guess I don't feel like my job is to respond to their timeline. And I feel like since and I think that the staff, there's an opportunity to say, let's agree. These are just my ideas for consideration, but I feel like we need more money, more information about, can the conservation have, or that not conservation, but up on the asset allocation. And I feel like this decision is properly the exact sort of thing that would benefit from the holistic picture of our portfolio, what we're thinking about in terms of asset allocation, and how we might evaluate those scenarios of value in the economics. So I agree with you, if we had more information about perhaps an even broader array of creative solutions here and relative values and timing, I feel like I'd feel better about walking away from a couple different options, and it feels like we preserve the optionality. And I guess the one thing that troubles me on the financial side is cost of capital is like the threshold for making decisions. It's not a way to, it doesn't cover, in my view, on the financial analysis, the opportunity costs of, if we could sell all or part of it for a large amount of money, the opportunity cost is more like 7% or 8% in the permanent fund. And I don't know what discount rate we use, but.
And to clarify, when I made that comment, I was talking with respect to the mineral estate, which we don't have any opportunity cost with, in that we can't dispose of it and reinvest those funds.
Right.
So yes,
We can mine it or we can get paid for it. I was thinking if we got paid for it, we put it in the permanent fund, we're making predictably 7 or 8%. But I don't even know if that's the right decision. The right decision may be to go ahead and not sell it, to pull out of REPI for the reasons that you all have articulated in the very beginning. I just don't feel like I know enough. And I don't feel like, let me ask you, if we said to the mining guys, give us 9 or 12 months to further analyze all of it, see what other plans there are, what other options. I can't imagine, they're not going to walk away. I mean, it's too important. So how can we buy 9 months to do more of an analysis for our decision making?
I guess the piece, two pieces. One is we've already asked them for 9 months or a year, right? They've applied for these. In the case of the exploration lease that's on there, they began that process 2 years ago, right? Looking at that space. So, and then the other, in the case of the Amrise one, it was about 1.5 years ago. And in both cases, we've said, hey, we're looking at this disposal. We as staff are trying to pull together more information. We are at a little bit of an inflection point with both of those operations. Because yes, 5 to 8 years is a long way, or it seems like a long way. But these are the timeline horizons that the mining industry works on. Because if they don't have it here, and they know they don't have it here, or they're not sure if they have it here, they've got to go look somewhere else and find it. And it probably is going to take them 5 to 8 years to find that other source, whatever it is. So we are at a bit of a point where there is some risk. We say, we're going to go get more information or whatever. I can guarantee they're going to say, okay, we're going to start looking elsewhere, right? Do they find it? I don't know. Right, but.
They're probably already looking elsewhere.
Right, sure. But I know from both operators would like these to be, frankly, really keystone pieces of their, stuff and materials businesses because of their locations, because of their, because of the resources, that are there. And, as a result, I mean, this is why these are high value properties, right? From a minerals perspective, why we can command the royalties that we do command, particularly on the gypsum.
The gypsum is like right next to the.
It's right next to the highway. Our mineral appraiser said you guys are getting 3 or 4 times the market rate here because of the, you know, what he would have considered the market rate, right? So we're in a really, commanding position, should we choose to, you know, move ahead with these types of things.
It's still hard. I mean,
Do
I
we
don't-
have any further insights at all on timing for REPI funding? Any
So,
updates?
that's a continuous effort. And as we kind of prolong any decision on this or, you know, additional scenario evaluation and so on, that prolongs the effort that is kind of occurring with our conservation partners, with our staff and so on. And part of why the guidance and the comments are helpful to our staff. In addition to REPI funding, the conservation partners have been looking at alternative funding sources. So via private sources through USDA's Forest Legacy program, and kind of looking at different ways to assemble the necessary funding. I would say, you know, it would be years out at this, most likely from now.
Define years. I mean, I'm kind of being sort of real about that.
like 5 years.
It's not in
Yeah.
place. I can say it's not in place.
Like over 5 years.
I would say 1 to 5
Okay.
kind of our plan.
I'm trying to grasp the net. You know, what that potential funding looks like versus what we would leave on the table if we decide to kind of place the bet with the REPI funding conservation partners.
Not following.
Well, just what that funding potential is for the sale, disposal versus what we know we potentially can have lined up now if we pursue our minerals question. And I know one's a bigger question mark than potentially the other.
Maybe pile onto that a little bit. I think again, from the beginning of Repius, we're like, Fort Carson was really interested, so
Mhm.
the whole property was thrown in and we knew we were gonna have to wrestle with all this. So
Right.
what I'm wondering is, again, my idea about extra time was for like the for the Department of Defense and the conservation partners and whoever else is involved to really think through, this is real, and to come up with some concrete plans about, could they live with, you know, the reduced size
the
or
middle
even
ground.
further reduced, or, and how real is the development, housing development, because you bring that up as a value. So I don't know. I'm trying to figure out.
I'm struggling with,
compare
it's hard to compare, like where it's kind of hard. I'm struggling with the comparison too. I get what we have in terms of current leases and activating that revenue. I am struggling with the potential stuff on the one side of the ledger versus the REPI stuff on the other side. And I'm struggling with a net for us to really compare all of it being somewhat future based, right? Some obvious ones we can count our chickens today, but there's a lot that's kind of fuzzy on both sides of the equation.
The non-financial.
100%. So
Like,
that's
what are
where
the
I'm kind of struggling to weigh in on any of the options, because it's really hard for me to put my hands around I don't mind delaying a potential bigger revenue payoff for us if it's potentially going to be much bigger. If there's no hope of the REPI funding ever coming close to what we could do in terms of if we just maximize all of our leasing potential and or, kind of, even put a percentage bet on like the real estate or the development potential. I'm just struggling with what it looks like.
Yeah.
For a comparison.
Might be worth kind of just walking through these as we.
Ben, 1 second. Commissioner Harvey, do you
Yeah.
have a question? And then maybe we'll give it back to Ben and Matt.
Yeah, I do have a couple questions. I guess, Ben, the first question is, what's the installed machinery there versus the very mobile machinery? And also, do they have a processing plant for gypsum on these two parcels?
No, there's no processing plants. Well, okay, there it is. I'll walk through them each. There's no permanent installed infrastructure at the GCC operation. That operation consists of literally a front end loader and the trucks that come in to get the gypsum. They bring it all to the Pueblo plant in Pueblo. At the Amrise, formerly Wholesome Stone Quarry, there is a permanent workshop at an office there. I don't know what the square footage is, but it's probably, footprint wise, maybe the size of this building, 1 story of the building we're sitting in today. Everything else there is mobile equipment. They have a mobile crusher. They have a mobile rigs and backhoes and that sort of equipment there as well.
Okay, so they're not tied down by permanent plant. It's mobile stuff. They can move off easily.
No, yes, it could be moved off relatively quickly should somebody.
Yeah. Well, I was just trying to get a sense of how dependent they are on that. Besides all the permitting stuff they'd have to go through otherwise. And then the other question is, do we know if the military in this whole deal would definitely want those two companies to stop their business up there, or is that still an unanswered question? If they did the easement, the military.
Yeah, so it depends on whether or not the expansion areas were sold by the board.
And if they were sold, would that throw off the whole deal, or is that still just a question?
I don't think it would. I think there's a range of potential outcomes here that we could try to solve too. One of the things that I was hearing from the board is that if we could distill this into more of a financial analysis of various scenarios, and that would be helpful. I think one thing that would help us is to understand maybe what the kind of criteria that would meet the board's threshold for saying yes to a disposal or no to a disposal. For example, if staff were able to solve to an outcome that maximize the mining revenues, minimize the area disposed of, so on. If there's anything like that can be elaborated on. I didn't quite highlight it yet, but we always, as staff, love to look at. Love to ask the question: is if we're selling something, would we be interested in buying this? And so here we have a 9,300 acre tract of land. It's in a developable area. It's got adjacency to urban growth. It's within a conserved kind of corridor area. It's got a lot of natural and other resources. So frankly, we are kind of at the level still of saying, would staff recommend a disposal specifically to the board or specifically not? And is there anything that the board has thoughts on in that regard that can help our staff at a very high level in the direction we're moving with this? And to date, it's kind of been in that category of maybe we would do this, but we're not sure how much interest there is. And that is true at the staff level and as we proceed from the board. So
I wonder if you could give us, and I'm sure it'd take a little while, best case, worst case, and expected outcomes, as in, what do you think this stuff is worth best case? What do what's low ball, and what do you think, what's the most expected? And it sounds to me that would take, and maybe there's a compromise between their urgency and our need to know that. And maybe that's 6 months or something. I don't know.
I agree, Mark, I agree. Like scenario, what my mind goes to is scenario analyses here with a weighted probability, because this all is very futuristic, right?
Yeah.
So I myself feel the need to understand the assumptions of future value and what those are predicated on, and the probabilities of achieving those based on the information, best information we have now, and a better articulation of what the non-financial benefits might be. Like, does the expansion of the mine kill all wildlife migration?
Right.
I don't know, because I can't tell from the topo and I'm not a scientist. But so really understanding the impact on conservation and on, for the DoD, maybe if you can't deliver the mines, then it does kill the deal. And maybe that's okay. And maybe this is just a property that, to replace that revenue, for us to have ongoing regular revenue that isn't as market sensitive as oil and gas for a duration of 20 years is a compelling, that's what we get for the permanent fund. This is diversification from the permanent fund. So that's why I keep bringing up the asset allocation, is that this is exactly what we want that tool to do, is to come up with a series of these scenarios.
I think we're all saying the same thing. Like I see the 1.4 million, but is that times how many years? Is that forever? Is that discounted to some degree? How much of that is a possibility? Is that the low end? Is there a higher end? I think we're all struggling with the same question against what potential of the REPI value.
We valued, our staff internal valuation discounted, right? I think we discounted at 15%, because that's normally where we discount minerals.
Sounds familiar.
Yeah. This did not include the active mine areas, right?
Yeah.
So this basically assumed that they mined out those areas and didn't even get to the other area for 5 years. And we came up with a value of net present value of 15 million for the currently contemplated disposal area.
Right, exactly, because you had said that earlier. And then the lease area, you mentioned some of those have an end of life cycle kind of thing that we have to factor in, and then others maybe could go longer and,
For example, like one of the mines, maybe there's 2 mines and 2 expansions. Does one expansion have an inordinate impact on other values we're trying to achieve? Or are they both the same? Or does one have a bigger impact on the potential development value that we're thinking? I don't know. I don't think anyone wants to put anyone through exercises, but
I think
it's hard today.
it sounds like you all are struggling with the same questions we are in determining some certainty around what's the path to follow. Would we buy it? Maybe.
There's
certainly
a lot of spreadsheets sitting on our.
Yeah, I bet. I bet.
That are sort of contemplating these things you're talking about.
And maybe the message to these mining companies is we're serious about it. We don't want to, delay their decisions about other areas, but we do need a bit more time to make a good analysis.
Certainly appreciate all of the input.
Do you?
One of the things I'm hearing is that, as I mentioned in the presentation, staff was prepared to bring you one of these expansions next month, and I'm hearing, let's put that off.
I think so.
Okay.
I don't think we're there yet.
And were you proposing just maybe a carve out?
Essentially, so that's what's exhibit, I think 3 to the packet was the reduced area. And that carves out the expansion areas.
Yeah.
And then a bit on the northeast with the road and some of the residential adjacent.
Right.
Yeah, carve out is right.
The carve out would be Originally, a lot of this area in blue would have been in that, including the two lease expansion areas. So yes, it would be carving out those areas, plus a little bit of other contiguous space that can.
And
make it all work
ironically,
together.
even with all this activity, there's a wildlife area
Yes.
in there,
The state wildlife area is over here.
in Aiken Canyon.
And
isn't
then
it?
Aiken Canyon is way up.
There's also a
And because I'm interested in this is our idea from really, I think largely an economic. The pullout or the reduction is like driven by us, right? To maximize our economic. What does Department of Defense, do we know what they would think or?
What that reaction would be.
So we haven't asked that question specifically. We have discussed at a high level with the conservation partners and the response was that this was certainly less preferable from their perspective. But we're not, I think it depends on what kind of stance the board were to take with respect to this. If we said this is all that's available, then that's the framework that is available and that's it. Versus if we're open to some solution.
And what happened? I mean, and another thing to run by would be like, if those two mines are gonna run out of gas anyway, or run out of mineral, run out of whatever their hard surface minerals. Then they have to be reclaimed, right? But then maybe that would work for the Department of Defense. They could have those or closer in. I don't know. So that's the sort of thing that I'm.
Maybe I'm mistaken, because it's certainly a while ago, but I thought they were just more interested in a buffer than something to develop or.
Correct. It would not be developed by the military in any way. So the conservation easement that would preclude that type of development would be placed on the property. It is a buffer for overflight, for keeping things from happening on the property that are not aligned with the military. And then there's also electromagnetic spectrum buffer concerns that they have and where people are putting towers and where
they don't like those at all.
Radars. Buffer's a great way to conceptualize the whole thing.
Yeah. Well, I think you've all raised really important questions.
Well, good luck.
Let us know. I mean, what are you thinking in terms of a time frame? Like 3 months to bring this back, 2 months? To visit with your partner?
I'd like to weigh in here. Thank you, Chair Fro. I have appreciated the conversation because another part of this is to get a sense of where the board is at, so we don't continue down a path. Working closely with partners who are working hard to identify funding sources, and then learn that you weren't interested in that path in the beginning. So this has been very helpful in terms of a time frame. As you know, Matt is heading up our asset allocation process, and we expect that to be completed by the end of the year, but to actually start running projects through that model. I think we'd be looking at Q1. So maybe we'd be looking at February, give us more time to do more of the terra firma discernment that you're searching for, to get more details from our partners, maybe some more details on funding, get a sense of whether the mining companies are willing to sort of go along with us for a little while longer. So that's what I would suggest. I was going to flippantly suggest that we found our November workshop reconsidered, and I think, what do you guys think? February, March, something like that.
Because actually, this property is like the perfect one for a beta test of the model, because it has a lot that we're trying to pull out. So, even before the model's quote done or the whole project's finished, we could run it in November and December, use it to help shape the model.
It's a beautiful example of our layered leasing.
Yeah, to say the least.
Yeah, to say the least.
Thank you.
Good, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Very much.
Did you learn anything here?
I never come and walk away feeling like I know less than I did before, so.
Okay, and now we get to the business goals, which are hopefully a little more formulated than future of Table Mountain.
Arbitrary.
I'm gonna do the slides.
Good morning, Commissioners. Deputy Director Nick Maxey here with Director Rose Marino. To take a brief look at business goals from the year just ended in terms of performance. And then to spend some time with the business goals that we've set for the next year. Everybody's always frustrated with this. So we'll start with a really brief touch on business accomplishments across the fiscal year just ended, which also marked a farewell to our strategic plan that had been in place since 2019. The ending strategic plan was built on these 4 pillars of financial trusteeship, real property stewardship, organizational excellence, and communications and outreach. And our strategic plan feeds directly the annual business planning that we do. For the purposes of my comments, I'm going to speak strictly to the 2 areas that align most directly to our constitutional mandate of financial trusteeship and real property stewardship. But I'd be remiss if I didn't spend just a second to acknowledge that without the other goals of organizational excellence and communications and outreach, very little of the work that we do would get done or would get done well. So jumping in terms of financial trusteeship, I've got some comments related to growing the total trust value, enhancing permanent fund, expanding recurring revenue, and optimizing non-recurring revenue. In terms of total trust value, staff had targeted a 20-year portfolio growth to $5 billion by 2037. And I'm sorry to say that we exceeded that more than 10 years early by $1 billion. That is attributable directly to lots of hard work by the staff in terms of generating revenue that feed the permanent fund, and building up of business lines like the water business line into something intentional, but also just economics and the finance environment have also helped the permanent fund grow a little bit as well. There's not a lot of nuance in that $6 billion yet. And so in the last year, we've undertaken the asset allocation project, the comprehensive asset allocation project. And we've got our contractor engaged and staff is working hard on building out that effort. And we're also spending time to really understand the full complexity of assets across all trust lands that we already work with every day. And as well as the costs involved in owning such a wide variety of assets. Concerning the enhancement of the permanent fund, the last year has been full of staff efforts, consistent and continued advocacy regarding both growth and returns of the permanent fund, as well as expansion of allowable and actual investments of the permanent fund. We hold that seat on the Permanent Fund Investment Board, and we do the best we can to leverage this organization's effort or this organization's work into impacts that the permanent fund can benefit from. Then there's expanding recurring revenue. So we've got business plans now in place for carbon capture and geothermal energy, and we saw new business opportunities in biodiversity and soil carbon and agrivoltaics and lots of renewable energy. And on that last point of optimizing non-recurring revenue, it really touches on some critical work from the last year plus, where existing programs spent a lot of important energy pulling additional revenue from trust lands through cleaning up uncertainty about access and right-of-way, and getting idle leases and unused acres out of oil and gas assets to put in the hands of operators who might make more of those resources, both in terms of making sure operators are performing well, as well as making sure acres of minerals are being put to full use. So, then I just wanted to touch briefly on the stewardship of our assets. Here, kind of some core components are elevating the standards of care, protecting the stewardship trust, increasing climate resiliency of trust lands in our work, and promoting biodiversity and healthy habitats. Right off the top, lots and lots of analysis this year leads us to knowing more than ever about the resources and opportunities available on trust lands. Asset management plans are being strengthened using the information we've been pulling from our work. Our regenerative ag manager has gotten that program going pretty strong. And our minerals team continues to require better performance and compliance from our lessees. When speaking about protecting the stewardship trust, we hired our stewardship trust manager, and stewardship trust management plans are being updated already and constantly. Staff also successfully brought data and analysis to the House Bill 25-1332 working group effort. I didn't have it in my notes, but we ran some numbers on that, and staff have put in excess of 2,000 hours of work into that effort.
2,000.
And teams, especially the stewardship team recreation group, have put in lots and lots of hours in trying to best represent the state land board to that effort. I've done a really nice job with that. In terms of increasing climate resiliency, staff actively promoted regenerative agricultural practices across about 175,000 acres of state and private lands in 15 counties, and saw successful engagement with 182 participants in educational events that also impact about 1.25 million total acres of private land, trust land, and federal land. And on the point of promoting biodiversity and healthy habitats, the Biodiversity Stewardship Action Plan was drafted. That's excellent news. Staff initiated 2 voluntary biodiversity and soil carbon projects and a wetland mitigation bank planning lease. And funding was secured for 9 priority wetland riparian projects. And additionally, a draft outline was developed for statewide invasive species and weed management plan. So it's another year of lots of good work. And it sets us up nicely for discussing what we've got planned ahead. In your board packet, we prepared a kind of a full report out of the same material, so you get the details in there. But we really wanted to spend most of our time with our comments this morning on the coming year. So I'll hand it to Director Rosbrina.
Thank you, Deputy Director Massey, and good morning, Commissioners. I'm very excited to report out on my current year's annual business goals. But before I do, Deputy Director Massey mentioned all of the staff's tremendous efforts to support HB 1332's implementation. But Deputy Director Massey is very humble. He played just a singularly important job in bottom lining and organizing our efforts there. So just want to thank you for that work, Nick.
Not an easy task.
Yeah.
Well done.
Almost done. Almost well done.
So as you know, we have 3 overarching goals in our current strategic plan, and embedded under each, we have 5 objectives. So that's really the anchor for the annual business goals this year. And so if you want to go to the next slide, I'm sure these are etched in your memories, but enduring revenue, resilient land, and connecting people are those 3 overarching goals. And if we go to the next slide on enduring revenue, just to flesh this out, the goal is to distribute dependable and growing cash flows for current and future beneficiaries. And as you know, this is our reason for existing, but the need is great. So we continue to strive towards growing our revenue in sustainable ways. Next slide. These are those 5 objectives under enduring revenue. And rather than go through every single one, I'm just going to lift up a couple examples to really bring to life our emphases here under enduring revenue, and then the next 2 overarching goals. But for enduring revenue, probably the one we talk about the most is diversifying revenue. So R2. And that's important because as we all know, our revenue is relatively non-diverse. It overwhelmingly comes from oil and gas, lease and royalties. And we've known this for a while. We've known we really have a need to step up our diversification in a way that's structured and really intentional. So heading up this effort will be Assistant Director Elliot Hoyt, with the year one deliverable being to really inventory the breadth and depth of existing performance and determine net revenue for each line of business. Currently, we only do that with commercial real estate, but we feel like bringing that focus on our other lines of business will really help us unearth more sophisticated understanding of the return on our investment and over in those lines of business and unearth ideas about goals and fresh ideas for each of those lines of business. And so really critical effort in R2. Closely related is R5 to expand partnerships and markets that enhance trust revenue. And this entails collaborating with public and private partners to realize new opportunities across the trust assets. And we see so much potential here. We see this happening already. Good examples are ecosystem services you heard about this morning from Mindy on this biological carbon sequestration project. So just a lot of potential here. And another example is geothermal leasing. And we see this as a form of clean energy that can grow our solid minerals revenue, which is where it's embedded in the agency at a time when, for example, the revenue from coal is expected to decline. But the idea here is to identify what we're missing. What are other frontiers that we can really enter into and be the vanguard for? And so Assistant Director Chris Smith will be heading this up with the year one deliverable being to get a full lay of the land by creating an inventory of partners and what they bring to the table to set us up in our out years to recruit new partners in new spaces. So really exciting effort there. And it's already been mentioned a couple times today, but top of mind is R3, which is the development and implementation of an asset allocation model. And that's really to guide decisions about acquisitions, about developing, conserving, depleting, or even disposing of our assets. And it's well underway, headed up by Matt LaFontaine with a year one deliverable that I mentioned previously, being to develop the asset allocation model itself. The board has already authorized the funding for this, and you'll see in your packet that we do identify resources needed. Here, you've already obligated those funds, and Chair Frobe has been an active participant in the development of that model. Building the model is really the first step. In out years, we'll be implementing it, evaluating it, and adjusting as necessary to ensure its effectiveness and growing the whole. So turning to resilient land, the purpose, this goal itself is to advance the economic productivity of trust lands through sound stewardship, including protecting and enhancing the beauty, natural values, open space, and wildlife habitat for this and future generations. Of course, that language is adopted from the Constitution itself. In many ways, it's all about land here at the State Land Board. Our land base is really fundamental to our ability to provide benefits to generations of school children far into the future. And the objectives that we've mapped out are all aimed at ensuring their long-term productivity, especially in the face of a lot of pressures. Think climate change, think water scarcity, declining biodiversity, and growing human populations across the state. And so really important goal of resilient land. The objectives I'd like to highlight here are L2, to strengthen management across state trust lands. This is really about minding the sword, making sure that we're upholding our constitutional duties to ensure the long-term productivity of our lands, to make sure they're treated well. And a crucial part of this is our lease language and our communications with lessees. We aim to establish clear expectations and accountability regarding sustainable land management. This is headed up by Deputy Director McMassey. With the year one deliverable is to draft lease language modifications needed to support the overall goal of resilient land, while also understanding that there are differences across different lines of business. So there can be some core central elements, but also tailored to each line of business. And this will set us up really well in out years to externally engage and then implement on these modifications. I wanted to highlight L3 as well. Again, carbon sequestration was a really great example of how this can work well, of using incentives and partnerships to promote sustainable land management. The year one deliverable is to identify which land uses really deliver the most financial bang for their buck while not having adverse non-financial impacts on the land, on wildlife, ecosystems, etc. We'll then create a plan to engage with highest priority opportunities, again, with our beneficiaries and long-term productivity of the land foremost in our minds. And so think of our species conservation work here. We need continued and enhanced teamwork between field ops and between our stewardship and biodiversity staff to foster more uptake by our lessees and partners in these win-win programs. So Assistant Director Elliott will also be heading up this effort in coordination with field operations and ecosystem services and biodiversity teams. Next, we have connecting people. And here we want to ensure long-term organizational excellence by investing in our staff and also building those external networks based on trust. And so these are the 5 objectives under connecting people. And as you helped to inform and guide in May, these are very much ordered from internally facing to more external. And so I'm going to start with the most internally facing. P1 is to invest in the people, systems, and tools needed to manage trust assets effectively. So strengthening staffing, technology, and operational capacity needed to sustainably manage trust assets and support emerging lines of business. And there are 2 deliverables for year one to understand where we're at in terms of our current capacity and need, how we utilize our resources organization-wide, and use this to identify gaps. And number 2 is to invest in interpersonal communication and relationship skills across staff and in supervisory relationships. And to the degree that the recommendations of 1332 speak to the development of deeper analysis and business practices, these things will be incorporated into the effort in terms of identifying potential new needs. This will be headed up by Deputy Director McMassey with the objective for year one to really help ensure organizational health and adequate capacity to continue striving for excellence. I want to close with the most externally facing one of these objectives, P5, to increase the understanding of the trust value and impact across Colorado. And the idea here is to increase support for how the State Land Board and our work delivers results for public schools and other trust beneficiaries across the state of Colorado. This will be headed up by our Public Information Officer, Annalie Parvo, who will bottom line an all hands on deck approach, enlisting staff, external partners, and undoubtedly some of you in implementation of this crucial endeavor. And as you very well know, the State Land Board could benefit from more visibility of the positive impact we're having on education across the state. So we are stepping into the light. The year one deliverables are to define who it is we are trying to reach and what will resonate with them, and to empower spokespeople both within the agency as well as external partners to communicate our wonderful story. Next slide. And with that, I'd like to close, and Deputy Director McMassey and I are happy to take questions on any of the 15 objectives, as well as any other thoughts you might have.
That's a lot. It is. Very ambitious. Guys feeling comfortable with the plan now? Can you recite the mnemonic? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So, with a chance for a quick review.
Fun. Which one, out of all those yourself, like, which one feels either more challenging or more exhilarating? I mean, it's so hard to pick among them, but is there one where your mind just keeps coming back to them for each of you?
I'll take one, and but Nick has ideas too. I think the resilient land, the way that L2 and L3 fit so nicely together, to really make sure we're minding the store, you know, in terms of protecting the land and ensuring its long-term sustainable management. And L3 is really getting others excited, especially our lessees, in striving towards even better land management. And again, we saw that beautifully illustrated with the two carbon sequestration projects just this morning. But I think there's so much power to do so much just based on those two and how they fit really well with each other.
For me, P1 really stands out, investing in people and systems and process. For most of my tenure, we've run this organization incredibly lean. And hey, hooray for us. That's great that we can do it. And it starts to beg the question, well, how much more could we be doing if we were organized a little differently? And so chasing that, it's a challenge. You know, this state's environment for adding resources to an organization is really tough. It's going to be another bad budget year. So we've got some headwinds to battle to get those things done, but up for the task, and it'll be well worth it. And then similarly, P2, kind of fostering that culture of collaboration and partnership. We have lots of people who demonstrate it every day in the organization, where using partners and perhaps even outside resources to do their work better really delivers some tremendous results. And so intentionally leaning into that as an organization, knowing we don't have to do this alone. We heard time and time again from our strategic planning consultants that there are lots and lots of people out there who want to help us get this work done really well, and that our mission truly is compelling. We have said, I think we all sort of drink the Kool-Aid and say we're here because we're partly because of the mission, and it is a compelling and important mission. But I don't know how often we would let our partners tell us the same thing, like, we're here for your mission. And hearing that again, time and time again, was fantastic. And exploring that and trying to make more of that, to again allow the organization to fulfill even greater degrees of its purpose is pretty exciting.
On that, go ahead.
I was just saying, Nick inspired this thought, which is on P1, running the organization lean. The legislature asked us, you know, what's the return on investment when you hire new staff? And we went back and did the math, and it was astounding. We were able to make a really incredible case on the return on investment. Even when you account for the fact that some of these positions are purely stewardship, we were still able to make a case across the board of really significant financial return on investment on the order of 4-1 and even more. And so I think that investing in ourselves is important. And that includes more staff, and that includes more capacity. And we're looking at all of that. And a good example is the lens technology, to really increase our capacity, to just have a fuller sense of what range conditions exist on our land. You know, all of that monitoring through that technology is important. So we're looking at all of those issues, but I think Deputy Director Massey is right that, you know, P1 is just really at the center of how we're going to grow and do even better in out years. So excited about that as well.
I have a personal ambition to have meetings with legislators and have the first one say, wow, you guys are tremendous. Like, actually acknowledge who we are. I have said in closer quarters that I think 1332 came out of a lot of unknowing, a lot of ignorance about what the state land board truly is. And I want to have these meetings and to sit down and actually start building allies who say, this is a tremendous opportunity here. And we have to feed it. We have to see it grow.
The great.
Yeah. And I like the focus on people too. The it's broadening or unlocking the leverage and potential of the IND funds. So even as I've hung around the state land board in the past, it's just like just squeaky, just trying to get $1 out of that fund. And as you've turned your focus towards saying, what can these dollars do for us? And it just seems like we've been able to leverage those a lot. And if we have the people to then think creatively and put those dollars to work to achieve, the stewardship and the practices and catalyze our partners, et cetera. So blessings. So it seems like it goes hand in hand.
It would be great to disseminate our strategic plan to the legislature, at least to key committees.
Underway.
Yeah,
good. It's almost printed, and that we are working closely with DNR on a plan for that.
In as much as, we've all gotten strategic plans from various folks, reminding, I guess, all of us that it's the stories that people remember. And how we have those stories top of mind for folks. And you've done all the core work, which is really critical, but having folks remember stories about why this is important really helps.
Which is where it would be great, thinking about sending out the strategic plan and whether the legislators read it or not, but if there was somehow a way to set up a recurring and even anticipated annual meeting with them. I know they're busy at the end of the session, but maybe in January, as they're just kind of getting going, that we could tell those stories, by way of.
You could include a note to every legislator saying state land board funds funded this school in your district or helped to renovate the school or because it's a lot of schools and maintenance and capital needs if a school wasn't built, and that will get their attention. It's a lot of work, but if you want, it's a way to translate a story, bring it down to their level around this is what happened and we do that for county commissioners. And these are bigger districts, so hopefully you could hone that in and just attach a note to the front of the strategic plan saying state land board funds did this in your district.
Great idea.
Great idea. Yeah. So they don't just set us aside. They'll go,
The other thing that, as I think about all the work we've done on this, we're all possessed with the increasing the financial returns. But as I think back about how Amendment 16 came about, it was because a lot of folks in this state really valued the stewardship of land, state land too. So I want to be sure that we continue to have that balance.
So if I may, going back to the legislature, does not the Senate Ag Committee have the agency and all the divisions of DNR for some sort of annual briefing at the beginning of the session, early in the session?
Yes, it's called the Smart Act hearing. So yes.
but that's not with Senate Ag.
No, that's with
JVC. Isn't it?
Smart is joint ag.
Oh, it's joint. Okay.
So the Ag Committee.
But it should be education, in my opinion. Sorry.
Well, maybe you should ask for both, or ask to brief both, since.
So what happens at Smart Act is the DNR director provides an overview of the highlights from all the divisions within DNR, and then and that's our opportunity to put forward the major highlights, and then the the members may or may not ask questions of the.
And the audience is strictly the ag committee?
There can be, it's a hearing, so it's a smart ag hearing, the joint ag committee, so House and Senate ag committees.
Both House and Senate at the same time.
I thought it was JBC.
That can happen too, depending on, we have a pending.
Okay.
Well, I think Christine makes a great suggestion, since the beneficiary is the educational community, should ask to go before the education committee as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Duly noted. Wonderful feedback.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, so if there's nothing more on the business goals, then did you want to just proceed with any highlights from the staff report?
You bet.
Right here.
I'll be quick, Brad. You're welcome to say. Staff report, we had 48 lease actions under authority delegated to staff by the board in the past month, generating 1.26 million in lease value. Number one was ag, and number two was recreation. In terms of staffing, Rachel Turner has made a transition to North Central District Manager, going back to her roots. And so that leaves an opening with the field operations team lead. And so Assistant Director Foy and I are working, and Deputy Director Massey are working on addressing that vacancy. I'm doing a posting for that important job. I wanted to mention drought. As we heard from Tim Brass from DNR, well over 90% of the state is in drought. And so we have seen just a lot of appetite among our lessees for voluntary reduction or removal of cattle, which is what the range needs. So it's nice to have that partnership with lessees to make those shifts because of the pretty bleak conditions. On the other
Can I just ask a
yes,
maybe naive question, but when you say removal of cattle, I mean, are they moving them someplace else, or are they slaughtering?
I think either is possible. I don't think that we ask for that information. My guess is they're moving them to other pastures or doing supplemental hay. We generally don't allow supplemental feeding on state trust lands, and the same does not apply to private lands in general. So I don't know, Commissioner Heath. I don't know. Do you know?
Assistant Director Hoyt, I don't know for sure. I think it's a mix, but I'm certainly happy to ask and get your feedback. I mean,
maybe I'm just naive, but just an
yeah,
important question right now on how people are dealing with reality of the drought.
I mean, the prices for cattle right now, my sense is that folks want to hang on to their animals as long as they can to get them as large as they can, because the selling price is going to be higher. That said, it costs money to move them and to put them in a feedlot or whatever it is. So it could be that they're selling them at this moment, or if they have access to other lands that they can move them to, they will do that. They come to us and they apply for an AUM reduction, is what it's called. In which case they, they're lowering their bill to pay us. So if they have an opportunity to move the cattle to another piece of land that economically makes more sense to them, I think they probably do that too.
No, I don't need to do more
Yeah.
research on just.
It's a good question. They don't just like disappear.
May depend on whether they're yearling operation or cow-calf. Lots of variables.
Probably should be asking you, Commissioner.
What's that?
Well, the question was during drought, when people remove animals from their property, do they, what I've heard is they do a combination of moving them to other land or slaughtering them.
Well, I think there's two contradictory forces right now. The cattle prices are great, so a lot of ranchers want more cattle, but hay is really expensive, pasture's really expensive, so that's fighting against increasing the herd. I have friends that have unloaded a bunch of cattle at market, and sometimes they'll go to fatteners early, I have other friends who are just looking for sources where there is grass, reasonable priced grass, maybe up in the high country instead of lower down. So I think it's a mix of what they do. I don't think you can give one solid answer for all the cattle.
Thank you.
Okay, on a happier note, playa restoration. Two playas have been restored at Brett Gray. They were previously pitted and excavated and now have been restored. And our staff has looked at the need for playa restoration and identified about 120 different sites that may need some sort of restoration. Contractors on that, but I think maybe just on the cusp of doing some larger scale playa restoration. Also wanted to mention that agrivoltaics are underway at State Trust Lands in Golden at the Cloud City Solar site. That lessee has contracted with a sheep rancher for vegetation management. So exemplifies something we've been talking about for a while. And we had a workshop at Jack's Solar Garden and are determined to press that have your cake and eat it too approach of having both solar and ag on the same property. Also wanted to mention that the geothermal request for proposals is out. That closes September 20. There were 11 parcels totaling about 6,600 acres. And so the staff will be working recommendations on awarding leases after that is closed. And very exciting new frontier for us. I wanted to mention the NASTO report from the trip to Medora, North Dakota. Chris and I attended that and I found great value, and as promised to the commission, provided a robust readout and have taken questions on that. And then the HB 1332 final meeting is on Monday. Yep, 9 a.m. at CMC. So I know that some of the commissioners have been listening in. That's in person as well as virtual. You're welcome to attend either way. And that's it.
Wonderful.
Any
All questions?
Do you mind sending the link for that again?
Happy to.
I think it's on the DNR website.
Is it?
Mhm.
Okay.
Am I correct about that?
So make sure you all.
Yeah. All right, great.
Marcus.
Oh, yes, Commissioner
Yeah,
Harvey.
just a quick note. From my reading these days, the issue of public lands is really hot these days, you know, certainly in the conservation community, but all the way across the West. And it would be great to highlight state land boards, the staff's work, great work on both conservation and raising income. And one good outlet might be that new magazine. It's called Republic, RE:, Public. It's started by Chris Keys, who was the editor of Outside Magazine for 15 years. I have contacts with him, and it might be a person Emily would want to reach out to, because they could do a really good job, you know, showing how public lands can be managed. And maybe contrast that to how some other public lands are managed. No names necessary. But anyway, that might be a good magazine to reach out to.
A great idea. Cool.
Thank you, Commissioner
Yeah.
Harvey. You have
Yeah.
previously put us in touch with that individual. I know Emily's nodding her head. She's already in touch. So great.
Oh, she's in touch with him? Great.
Great
Great.
lead.
Okay.
Thank you for the reminder.
Yeah.
And thank you, Commissioner Harvey, for kicking us into the last part of the agenda, commissioner items. Right, and Josie, I think you had.
I do. So I want to present to the board what I think is a possible opportunity, and that is around Piney River Ranch. It came to my attention because of an article in the Vale Daily this week. I was actually up near Valdez Junction and I was able to get a copy of the paper, but it I think so aligns with many of the things we talked about with innovative recreation. I have no idea whether it's a possibility, but I'd like to have us explore. And I'm wondering if, we could have some conversation.
Well, and I think I understand some of our staff is
Right.
hot, Matt's eye as well, and
Hey, Medina's.
and Dave Medina's, yeah. And in fact, Josie, that's sort of the most prominent visible, but as Matt and I were talking, there's an idea too of like, well, Denver Water owns a lot of land around in a lot of places, and maybe there's like, besides Pine Lake, maybe there's even other options, and maybe
Yeah.
this is sort of one of those ways to build a pipeline, to think about creatively about sourcing other properties. But Matt, would you like to say anything about that for the commissioners?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for mentioning the property. Our staff also discovered this potential availability, and we've reached out proactively to Denver Water to kind of initiate the line of communication. But we will continue to investigate it. I think at this time, the feedback we've received is no decision has been made as to whether or not the property would definitively become available, but we are going to continue to investigate it, and are certainly very interested in it. It would align well with our operations.
So could we up it on their priority list to think about?
We will do our best to sell ourselves as the optimal purchaser of the property.
I think, because there's a lot of community interest around there, if you could keep us posted.
Yeah.
Certainly.
Right. And it occurs to me too that those are questions even for our county commissioner roundtables. Just like, are there interesting areas in your county that
That's a great idea.
should we, we're always building a potential acquisition pipeline, and are there things that are important that we should stay abreast of developments and whatnot? Any other thoughts of other places, just while we're on this line of thinking of?
So what would you think could be a timeline? You could at least, would it be for discussing with them beyond where you are now? Are there the things we could do to elevate that?
Our staff will continue to engage with them and see what we can discover about their intentions with the property. The idea of trying to see if there are other properties available, something we'll also pursue, and see if there's a broader conversation that might be had, and we'll move that along as rapidly as possible on our side.
Matt, could you, in line with Josie's suggestion, you summarize just top line criteria that any of us ought to be aware of as you look at properties for acquisition as possible as?
Sure.
What are the floor criteria?
Yeah. The state land board has historically cast at least during my tenure here, a pretty wide net when it comes to acquisitions and what that potential criteria could look like. And that's because we have our various lines of business, different real property assets, including a commercial real estate portfolio. But in general, the kind of screening criteria that we look for are properties that could produce diverse incomes based on our existing lines of business. So all of our line of business managers have an opportunity to kind of weigh in early on when we're screening properties. Something that's adjacent to or blocks up existing state trust lands and makes it more operationally efficient. Properties that have water rights. And then, of course, we're looking at properties that are within a certain value range. So as an example, right now, we have about $7.5 million of NSE funds that are in the bank that we could deploy on a short time frame to acquire a property. But we also have a large disposal pipeline in progress, including Lahara and Bohart, our Glade Reservoir project.
Specifically on the NSE pool fund, what's the expiration date of that 7.5 before it reverts to the permanent fund?
And the majority of it is next fall, I believe September, and
what's your confidence level that you can find an adequate transaction to acquire between now and then?
With respect to that tranche, it's very high. We do have about a little over $2 million that expires this this December. That we're working on a solution for the placement of that. Without going into too many details, there are some things that staff is working on with respect to that. I'll mention that the State Land Board recently brought on John Hesse, who's our acquisition and entitlements manager. He joined us in May. And since he's arrived here, has been working toward building a very robust acquisition pipeline.
Good.
And he's largely focused on that effort. So our ability to acquire properties and redeploy NSE proceeds will only improve going forward.
Do we have any, is there any predictability when Lahara will close and we'll have that $45 million in the bank?
Yeah, good question. That transaction is progressing. It's obviously a very binary outcome with respect to those funds, but I can tell you that we are working toward closing that at the end of October of this year.
Whoa.
This year.
Wow.
But I don't want to say that they will close. So there's absolutely no guarantee that that transaction will close. That is the earliest it will close. That's what we're working toward.
What are the impediments to closing? The obstacles?
Really final approvals of the transaction on the federal side and commitments of the funds and their due diligence process that they're working through actively. On the State Land Board side, we've gone through the necessary actions, the approval process that we went through at the end of last year and so on. So at this point, I would say the transaction closing is predicated on the buyer's performance. There's not currently a contract in effect, but again, it's working towards that outcome.
So I'm trying to read between the lines here. That's a pretty diplomatic statement you just offered. Can you be any more specific than that when you say buyer's performance? I mean, is it ultimately a high level political decision?
Yeah, that's not an area that I don't think I can respond to that with anything beyond speculation, frankly. All I can say is that on our side, we will be ready to transact the property at the end of October. Buyers willing to acquire it.
And the buyers are continuing to take the actions in
Yes.
accordance
Yes.
with a transaction.
We are headed in that direction without question. On the 18th, I'm going to go down to the property and meet with representatives from both the Forest Service and BLM, their project teams. Western Rivers, our consultant, has been managing this project, specifically with Alan Lobbins, their primary project coordinator, has been doing a terrific job. Everything is advancing, but again, I don't want to count the chickens before they hatch the transaction. So.
Right, so we're going back to the possibility that we could have that large pool of NSE funds, and then the clock starts ticking. 2 years, right?
Correct.
Once you have the money in hand, are you building a capacity, a potential acquisition list out that can consume most of that?
We are, and that's our acquisition pipeline. And this also has an integrated component with the asset allocation project, the model that's being built with that, and the ultimate consultant recommendations for how we might allocate those future funds. But we are in the background working on generating those opportunities.
Good, thank you.
Sure. Good. I think more of that will unveil itself as part of the asset allocation process. Good. All right. Well, commissioners, we're almost done. I passed out the slightly revised procedures for request for review and final action items. The first several are pretty much the same as things have been running. And as you had asked me to come back with some recommendations, these are it. The key changes are under board deliberations, and again, reinforcing that once we've obtained the information from staff and presenters, then we'll turn to each other and have a discussion about the merits of the issue in front of us. and we'll share a rationale for thinking about things one way or another. So that's important to recognize. And then under this procedure, Director Rosemarino and I recommend that, as we've stated here, the president will ask for a motion. And there's two things about that. One is I'm going to ask for the motion as the chair so that I control traffic. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. Second thing is this motion can be the motion prepared and recommended by staff, to support that. It could be something else that arose out of our discussion. It could be a motion not to make a decision, whatever. But so we're interjecting a little bit of flexibility here on the motion side of after we've had a discussion, then I'll ask for motion, and it could be any of those things. And we'll either have a second or not, take a vote or not. But this is where we all get to talk to each other and move towards a decision on the issue that's in front of us. So those are kind of the two big things that have changed. So are there any questions about that? Commissioner Harvey, I'm sorry you don't have a copy of this. Maybe.
Someone can fax it to me.
Yeah.
You'll find that.
But it's in line basically with everything we've talked about.
That's
For the most part.
I just have one observation or question.
Sure.
The concept that at some point the discussion is robustly complete or whatever, and the chair can ask for a motion. That does not preclude any member of the board from making any motion they wish at any point in time. In other words, we don't need the chair's permission to make a motion.
Technically, that is true. And what we're recommending here to kind of keep all the pieces working, the presenters coming back and forth, the staff coming back and forth, helping make sure that our discussion illuminates the rationale. I'm suggesting that I prefer it if I made the motion.
Ask for a motion.
Having said that, there's nothing that prevents you from making a motion.
Ask for a motion.
You'd prefer it if you ask for a motion.
Yes,
not if you
I'm
make-
not going to make the motion. Sorry. Yes, thank you for that clarification. It's really about asking for the motion.
So do you anticipate that there was a bit of a model of that today as we discussed what to do with Reppy?
Yeah, well, Reppy was an information item.
Right.
It was,
Yeah, no, I
we did do
understand.
this.
We did a lot of
that.
great conversation. That's exactly what I'm hoping to get.
Well, previous to that, that's sort of how we operated
Yeah,
today.
yes, exactly. Yes.
I'm sorry, I was gonna make that point. You may not have noticed it, but that's exactly how every discussion went today. And it, from my observation, seemed to go smoothly and well.
Yeah, I felt like it worked pretty well. I sort of tested it. Yep. And yes, and Commissioner Preble, thanks for correcting me. Yes, I don't want to make any motions. I want to ask.
Oh, that was Ed's point, not my point. My point was, my point was simply that
You get credit.
because the chair might ask for a motion, that does not preclude a board member making a motion.
That's correct.
Anytime they wish.
She's asking us to wait until she asks for a motion, to make a motion.
I mean, what you're saying, this is a culture you hope we would have.
Yeah, yes, these are recommendations for
Yeah.
how we can keep the meeting
I think the goal
rolling smoothly.
then would
And
make
effective.
sure that our conversation is concluded.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Before we move forward with it.
So, I mean, the elephant in the room, if you will, is the Thornton discussion. Where I probably moved or one of us, I don't even remember who made the motion. Part of it, I think, comes from time. Part of it comes from, whether or not people feel it's right for conversation. So I don't think we should preclude someone feeling like they can enter a motion, but I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
You hope the
Or
culture. will
asking,
be-
maybe rather than making the motion saying, Madam Chair, may I, which is Commissioner
Yeah.
Pribble's good at that, may I make a motion?
Or
And
may I
it will
even
be better.
summarize what I think we're all saying?
Right. Or asking the question, I try to ask the question. Are there any more questions or comments?
Are we ready
Are
for
we
a
ready
motion?
for a vote?
I think that's fine.
And so I invite you to we'll keep trying this, but I felt like it did work pretty well today.
I do too.
That sound all right?
Well, I think so. But the individual board member making an individual motion is not, I hope there's not an implication that that board member is obligated to make a motion that reflects any summarization or generalization or consensus of the discussion. What I guess what I'm trying to preserve here is the individual agency of each of us to put forth whatever
Whatever
proposition we happen to believe in.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's all.
I think
It's more
whenever
procedural.
Yeah,
you
more
say, are we ready for a motion?
Yeah,
Anyone
yeah.
can propose
Anyone-
whatever kind of motion they'd
Whatever
like
kind
to
of
put
motion.
forward. And then we'll see if it's seconded.
Right. It's not that, I mean, I'm not arguing against consensus, but I am arguing for full and fair discussion and the individual autonomy of individual board members to put forth whatever proposition they wish to put forward.
I don't think it's a matter of consensus. It's just allowing a discussion to occur before a
Right.
motion happens. And
Got
then
it.
that motion is up to whomever
Understand?
they want to frame, however
Right.
they want to frame it.
And whoever wants to frame it, right?
Yeah.
And it feels to me like, I'm gonna go back to the example of this morning. I said what I initially thought. I then listened to you all. And so, I mean, what we may have here is what we all kind of in practice hope will be our continuing way to.
For the information. For the REPI discussion.
Right.
Yeah. No, I think that was, the intent was to help staff. Give staff an idea of where we were at, so.
But I think Commissioner Heath's point was, I change my mind, or my leaning when I hear from you all, and there's things or perspectives that I don't have. So that's the point, is trying to get to the full and fair, robust discussion on, and especially in important issues that we need to make decisions on. So, great, I think it's time for lunch. Let's call the meeting over. Any objections?
Great.
Miss you, Mark.
Well, I miss you guys. Sorry I can't be there.
Thank you for encouraging us all to think about the wildfire.
Oh yeah, did everyone get their book? Because I got some mixed messages from eBay. Did everyone get a book yet?
No, did anybody?
No?
I didn't read anything.
Wildfire book.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, I sent books to all the commissioners, but who did and who didn't? Josie, I know you did.
The staff did.
I
So
didn't, well, I
Jim-
have to check another place. So
Okay, so Deb and Christina, did you get yours?
I did not, but I
Okay.
should check what address you sent.
Okay, well, we'll try to figure that out shortly. So
Okay, thank you.
anyway, yeah.
Yeah, Mark, I didn't receive anything and I don't think Josie did.
No, I did.
Oh, you did?
Like a book.
Yeah, I haven't. received
Yeah, okay. Okay, I'll check because I ordered it through eBay and maybe they're screwed
I
up.
have some in my
Interesting book about wildfire.
Yeah, I want to read it. Thank you.
Okay, I'll work on that. Great. Great to see you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks to you.
So
And
real
now-
See you
quick
soon.
announcement for the commissioners, if you're interested, I set out 2 of the patent books in the conference room.
Oh,
here.
fun.
Nice.
Great.
Way out.
Commissioner Harvey will fax you a patent book.
Excellent, excellent. I'll turn my fax
I
on.
wanna
Thanks.
see the patent books. Because we have a few minutes. It's just a history, Colorado, right? Like a 2.5. Yeah, it's very.